Hi, you've stumbled onto kind of a unique video. This is a compilation of a variety of what we'll call ephemeral videos that I released this summer. So each video in this video that you're watching now is a video that I released earlier this summer, in the summer 2024, then deleted after 1 week. And I decided, actually pretty early on in the summer, that I would make a compilation of all of those videos, put it together, and put that out for everybody to watch. This video, this compilation, will not expire. It will last in perpetuity as long as YouTube and my YouTube channel does. So enjoy the various videos that are in this project. They cover a wide range of different topics, and I hope you enjoy them. For those of you who watched all of the Ephemeral Evelynn series already, there are 2 new videos for you waiting at the very end of this one. The first of those new videos is the finale of the season of Ephemeral Evelynn. In essence, I talk about my experience of making these videos every week, deleting them, why I did it. Did it help re-spark my creative drive? Well, we'll find out there. The last video is one I made and recorded and meant to release as an Ephemeral Evelynn video, but I didn't like it very much. Maybe you'll find something useful about it. It's about resting and my personal inability to rest. In it, I try to rest. You can go watch it if you want. But yeah, you can skip around if you like. I've marked up the video in the appropriate places where a new video starts. And yeah, enjoy this compilation. There's a deer who's been stalking me. Maybe we'll see more of it. I watched Kiki's delivery service 13 times the past 2 years, which both seems like an exorbitant number of viewings for a children's movie and an appropriate amount for someone with a 2-year-old. Kiki's delivery service is not my favorite Studio Ghibli movie, more on that for another video, but it is one of my favorite films, and I even got a picture book to read with my kids, which turns our mutual love of flying wishes into an educational exercise. So I tell myself, I love the concept. I love Kiki as a character. I love how pretty the scenery looks. I love the music. Perfect movie, 100 stars out of 5. Perhaps the greatest slight a critic not paying attention could levy at Kiki's delivery service and its sibling chill Ghibli movies, Only Yesterday, Whisper of the Heart, and My Neighbor Totoro, is their lack of conflict. Kiki moves to a new city, starts a business, runs the business, loses her powers for like 2 scenes, and then gets them back. The movie has no antagonist Kiki must defeat, no meaningful obstacles to overcome, no new abilities she must acquire to succeed, nor any personal fault she must resolve. In the avoidance of these movie cliches, Kiki's delivery service may appear scant with conflict. But of course, you paid attention when you watched it 13 times and noticed something bubbling under the surface. Kiki loses faith in herself as a witch. During the losing her powers sequence, Kiki finds she can no longer fly. Not because some other witch hexed her, or her broom was damaged, or she was mean to her cat. No, her powers turn off because she loses her creative spark, which is best emphasized during a late scene where Ursula, the painter, compares Kiki's experience with her losing her witch powers with the time she just couldn't paint. Ursula tells Kiki she had to learn to paint for herself, and Kiki will have to also find new motivation for flying. In the next scene, Kiki needs her powers to save a friend from potential tragedy, and they come back to her. She flies like she's never done it before. It's easy to attribute this flight difficulty to poor choice of broom, but I've come to view it as Kiki's new motivation, acting, as 2 fresh legs she never walked on before. Of course, the first few steps were going to be tricky. Why Kiki loses her powers and why she gets them back is up to interpretation, and oh god, many people have interpreted it already. You don't really need me to weigh in, but the I Am Error take is Kiki lost her creative spark. She started flying because it was exciting and new. When it stopped being that, her spirit ceased to have the motivation to do it at all. The witch, or rather the artist, needs something to propel them forward. Otherwise, they sputter out a few seconds after takeoff. In the Japanese version of the film, Ursula calls the creative spark a power given by God, but laments we artists suffer for it. I feel I've been suffering for it lately. Yeah, that's right. This video ain't about Kiki, it's about me. Last August, two completely separate events in my life became hopelessly intertwined due to their temporal proximity. One event, I defended my dissertation and subsequently finished my PhD. The summer prior to the defense was hectic, as a moved up defense date meant I wrote about 50,000 words or about 150 pages in just under 2 months. The other event, though, I was nearly killed by a car and spent months recovering from broken bones and bleeding brains. Ultimately, from May through October 2023, I was either writing solely because I had to or not making art because I physically couldn't. Lost in the shuffle of this personal triumph and tragedy was my creative spark. I've written virtually no academic literature since last August. I've made little to no music in that time either. If you go to my channel page, you might see I released 5 videos since being nearly manslaughtered, which doesn't seem too awful at a glance, but context is queen. I did all the legwork of the Shadow of the Colossus video prior to the accident, and it was only written and recorded by me. My pal Kevin did the lion's share of the labor of video editing. The next video was based off an essay I wrote for my students, which I wrote because I assigned them a personal essay project to end the semester and wanted to write it with them. The top 10 video essays video took me 24 hours to write, record, edit, and release, and the pain of losing friends similarly was written and recorded in under a week. Finally, the Portal video, the other big video that I made, was written and recorded in early January. I edited most of it that month too, but then I lost all interest in the project until early April when I picked it up and finished it just so I could stop feeling bad. Heck, that video is also kind of about losing interest in talking about Portal 2, a kind of microcosm of my own artist instincts faltering. When I started this channel, my videos were bad, but I had such enthusiasm for it. I made a video essay every week for 22 weeks straight after releasing my first one. A year later, from November 2022 through July 2023, I wrote, recorded, and edited 6 elaborate reviews, aka Season 1, which altogether totals 14 hours of content for you to enjoy. That is just incredible to me looking back in hindsight. Making videos was just so new and fresh and exciting for me, and I had so much I wanted to say. Then when I transitioned to long videos, like my inspiration for starting this channel, Action Button, I found a whole new spirit of invention propelling me forward. Yet today, either the engine that drove all those miles broke down, or the gasoline that powered it has run out. And I'm not sure which. The truth is, I'm running on fumes, and while the creative spark is still within me, inspiring me to make something, that potent ability to follow through I displayed in the first few years of the channel isn't showing up for me right now. I know I'm busier than ever with 2 kids, a full-time job, just moving to a new house, and more, but I also know that none of that is the reason I'm struggling to find my creative self. Instead, a combination of fatigue at making videos for what is now a long time, and a sense of self-consciousness about my videos has led to stagnation and unwillingness to create because whatever I put out might be wrong in some sense. I hesitate to start projects, or I start them and I hesitate to follow through with them. Of course, those feelings then start a cycle where because I've abandoned projects and ideas already, I feel more willing to abandon the next one that comes my way. Left to my own devices, my videos are only going to come from a place of guilt, not the lust to create. So, like Kiki, I need to find my own inspiration and reignite the creative fire within me. To do that, I've got to try something new, and I came up with an idea that might work or might fizzle out completely. You see, I love the process of making art, but I easily get in my own head about it. When I look at my own YouTube page, equally a representation of my artistic output and a kind of mausoleum of my time, I kind of just want it to all be the important projects I spent significant time and energy making. Yet the page is way more populated by shorter videos that it took me little time to make, and they're more popular, which is kind of ironic, I suppose. Honestly, I hate that the short videos are the same size as the ones I give so much more effort to, which puts me in a conundrum. If I release a bunch of short videos in a row, I'm going to look at my YouTube page and hate what I see, as it won't reflect what I want to put out in the world. If I don't switch it up and do something new, I'm going to be disappointed in myself and probably continue the current unfulfilling trajectory. Yes, I know I care too much about the aesthetic of an internet page only a few people look at. I suppose I could start a new channel, but I've spent a long time building an audience here, and I don't want to just abandon y'all to go make doodads in the corner. I know, what a conundrum. To rev the engine of creative hope, I'm going to make a video essay a week for the entire summer, June, July, and August.
Each video will release at 12 o'clock noon Central Standard Time on Monday, and it will be removed from YouTube the next Monday at 12 o'clock, when a new video will replace it. I'll put an expiration date and maybe a clock on the thumbnail with a date in the title to indicate the ephemeral nature of the video. I am aware that this is similar to that Markiplier kind of project Unus Annus, but I never watched that, so I hope you're cool with it being kind of like the same thing. Each video will remain up for patrons indefinitely, but that is not a Patreon plug. Though, hey, I guess if you want to give me some money, go ahead and do it. Instead, I think the appropriate way to appreciate these videos is to catch them for their week in the sun. I just feel that people paying me to make videos deserve to see them, okay? Maybe if you like these videos, I'll merge all 13 into like a super video, like a mega cool video. That would kind of be neat, I suppose, but no guarantees. I don't know what I'm going to do with this project. Alongside them, I hope to release regular uploads that will stick around forever. So you can tell the difference based on when the drop is and if they have an expiration date. I hope you join me for the ride. I'll see you next week, okay?
One of my favorite films is Wong Kar-wai's 1994 dramatic crime romantic comedy Chungking Express. I like it so much it was a central topic of my master's thesis. Chungking Express is divided into two stories. By far my favorite is the second one where Faye Wong cleans an unknowing cop's apartment. Wong is just so cute and charming in the role, and by the end of the film I feel all the feelings. The first half ain't no slouch either. It's great cinema, I think about often, but it is the more forgettable of the two. Perhaps forgetting that section is the point, because the central metaphor explored within is expiration dates. Takashi Kaneshiro plays Cop 223, a down-on-his-luck drug buster dumped by May, his girlfriend, on April Fool's Day. Unsure if it's a prank or not, 223 decides to wait a month before accepting the breakup. To pass the time, each day he consumes canned pineapple. I don't have any canned pineapple, but here's some canned chickpeas. Meanwhile, each can must have the expiration date of May 1st, which is his birthday. The closer the calendar gets to the 1st of May, the more morose 223 becomes. In a voiceover, he asks, "Is there anything in this world that doesn't expire?" When your reference point is canned pineapples, aka food, it really does seem like everything expires. We intuitively understand that food expires because we've seen or eaten expired food before. Mold grows on it, supposedly solid foods liquefy, it smells atrocious, and thus it loses all of its utility. When I was in high school, I ate long expired carrots and spent the afternoon vomiting. Ever since, I've monitored expiration dates like a hawk. Somewhere between 20 and 30% of food in America is thrown away because it reaches its expiration date. Whether or not the food was actually unsafe for consumption doesn't really matter, as the perception of expiration does enough heavy lifting. I recently moved out and cleared out multiple garbage bags of expired food while getting ready to move my material possessions to a new home. I did keep my rare foods, aka like my authentic Chinese cooking supplies, because they aren't so easy to find. Someday I'll either consume them or they'll end up in the trash. Either way, they've already got one foot out the door. We accept food as a temporary good we purchase, but even technology expires too. Here are the laptops I've used for the past decade. Half of them don't even turn on anymore. These square amalgamations of plastic and metal seem eternal at a glance, but their batteries die and their graphics cards become outdated. They expire in the same way the bananas in my kitchen bite the dust. They just do so on a different timetable. They don't come with a prearranged date of last consumption, but the presence of expiration date does not deny them the existence of one. Everything made by human hands expires eventually. The Colosseums of Rome, the Great Wall of China, space stations. We don't like to imagine that the house we grew up in will one day be torn down, but it will. If it were only our material goods, perhaps expiration would be bearable, but even the ethereal finds ways to die. Your job will someday abandon you. Either you'll retire or be fired. That is, unless something more unfortunate occurs first. Your friendships will one day expire into acquaintances, or perhaps nothing at all, and you'll wonder how you were ever friends in the first place. Your time in school will end. Your land deeds will one day be sold. The song you're listening to will be forgotten. It's all ephemeral, and you'll be left missing what was. One of the strangest promises the internet seems to give us is perpetual existence. YouTube videos from 2006 can still be opened like little time capsules. Tweets from 10 years ago are as accessible as the ones from yesterday. Forum posts from 1999 are still up and ready for reading, if you care to look. The old adage is nothing disappears from the internet. And while any cursory knowledge of contemporary technology and archival efforts renders that phrase a lie, we seem to hope for a more optimistic truth, that we've invented a place beyond expiration. Yet, I'm sure in 100 or 200 years, someone will look back with hindsight and be able to identify the exact expiration date of the billions of videos on this platform. It just doesn't seem obvious to us now. It's easy to jump to the conclusion that expiration is a metaphor for death, our personal death, that is. But I disagree. When you expire, you're not going to be there to experience it. So none of the expirations that populate our lives prepare us for our own eventual demise. Instead, they prepare us for the next, perhaps greater, perhaps weaker, expiration waiting around the corner. Like in Chunking Express, each expiration is a farewell, and how we handle those goodbyes defines us to some degree. Some of us hold on to our expired goods for far too long, and we get botulism as a result. Some of us let go preemptively to avoid the pain of expiration at all. What does this ephemeral video essay series say about me? It seems I'm attempting to wrestle destiny from the future by giving my work a predetermined expiration date. Maybe that's the case. Maybe I'm trying to acclimate myself, or you, to a future without I Am Error. I don't know. Perhaps it doesn't matter in the end. The videos were going to eventually expire anyway. Even if we exclude the future sun's explosion destroying Google's servers, each work of art goes through numerous expirations. Yes, art expires if it's physically destroyed, but does it not also expire when it ceases to be relevant? Does it not also expire the last time someone experiences it? Way back in 2005, I made animations on Newgrounds. Those are still hosted there, and I couldn't delete them if I tried. But I wonder, when were those projects most ripe? At that time, videos had to survive an initial vetting process by the community. If your animation was too crummy, users would give it poor reviews and it would be deleted from the website. Some of my videos didn't make it. They were gone forever. I feel it was then, on the precipice of death, all my videos were most alive. Now, the random Naruto animations with hundreds of thousands of views that survived are virtually expired. They may exist, but only in half-life, waiting for some definitive end to take them. Some art expires before it ever reaches the viewer. On my Newgrounds page, I was surprised to see a community post promising a video about snowmen taking over the world. I never made that video, and I don't even remember having that idea in the first place. That idea, long expired, meant something once, if only to me, but it means nothing now because it is expired. Perhaps the first and most important expiration to art is when the artist finishes it. After all, life is defined by its ability to adapt, and death is that which no longer changes. Meanwhile, the work of art released into the world, now consumable, is no longer malleable. It is no longer alive. This idea works contrary to food though, huh? Expired food is that which has changed from edible to unedible. Meanwhile, an expired idea is one which no longer has room to grow. As someone who critiques art for a living, I know ideas continue to live as long as someone is willing to talk about them. So I wonder, how long until no one discusses my ideas anymore?
should I even care to know the answer? That strange duality, that the expired thing is both that which can no longer change and that which has changed, perhaps reveals the difficulty in discussing any expirations at all. At once we desire to consider the change that occurred, and yet we're shocked by the vision of a future without any further change. How we untangle the conundrum is a process we all attempt and all fail to complete. When I was in 8th grade, my teacher told me the story of when the adult son of a family at my church killed himself. The elders of the church met to decide whether or not they would host a funeral for him, since the act is a cardinal sin in the eyes of the church. Some felt that to give him a funeral would in some sense honor his choice of death. My teacher argued against that idea and told them and me that funerals are for the living. Regardless of how stupid that debate was in the first place, I've kept that concept in my head ever since. We're often so focused on what expired that we lose sight of who experiences the expiration. Remember that next time something important to you, or someone important to you, vanishes. At the end of his section of Chungking Express, Cop 223 has a beautiful, if strange, experience with a woman, and she wishes him happy birthday. The previously depressed policeman then comes out of his shell and remarks, "I'll remember her for the rest of my life. If memories ever come in a can, I hope that can never expires." Like him, and you, I have memories I want to hold on to. I just hope that, even if it's just in the fleeting moments of post-consciousness, they outlive me, so I don't have to suffer their expiration. See you next week. Movie haircut scenes come in all shapes and sizes. Sometimes characters change their hairstyle to disguise themselves. Others cut their hair as an empowering action reflective of newfound autonomy. For the unlucky, the haircut is performed against their will or best wishes for themselves. Of course, this versatility in potential reasons for and outcomes of a haircut scene makes sense. Hair is important to most people. It's a visual identifier in a visual medium, and it carries significant narrative potential to communicate character development. Fictional haircuts have a unique emotional potency because real-world haircuts can turn out in so many different ways. You might love the new you, or you might hate the way you look. Each snip of the scissors carries with it a sense of contingency, an outcome undetermined. Well, at least for me, the outcomes feel random because I take off my glasses to get a haircut. Thus, I've never seen, in unblurred detail, somebody cut my hair. I might as well close my eyes as people disconnect my follicles from my body. Perhaps my unperception of the act created my fear of haircuts, though maybe there's also more to it. Regardless, I've lived on this planet for 30 years and I've dreaded nearly every haircut I've ever gotten. The technical word for this phenomena is tonsure-phobia, the fear of haircuts. Maybe you have it too, maybe not, but I bet you've had some emotional reactions to your hair, and that's what this video is about. Like haircut scenes, hair comes in all shapes and sizes, and nobody gets much choice as to the kind of natural hair they grow. We have all sorts of ways to describe natural hair: straight, wavy, blonde, curly, frizzy, red, dry, oily, brunette, kinky. My kid and I have a book about hair, which is somewhere around here. Right here, The Hair Book. It concludes with a picture of a mirror and asks, "What kind of hair do you have?" Well, regardless of your answer to that question, I doubt you've never felt dissatisfaction with the kind of hair you inherited. Friends, family, strangers, and some of you viewers compliment my curls from time to time. Middle-aged women, in particular, seem ready to kill for it. I even had a student this semester raise their hand in the middle of my class to ask my hair care routine, and then during the break, I explained it to them and they wrote down every single detail. I don't think it's the best looking hair, but I genuinely do love the kind of hair I have. But that wasn't always the case. When I was in high school, I straightened my hair every day because I hated my curls. I wished that they would go away so I would look normal, or at least like some other scene girls. For years in college, I kept my hair short so my hair would appear wavy rather than curly. Hair seems to naturally invoke the grass is always greener thinking. We're stuck with one kind of it pretty much forever, and everybody's got such different hair, we're bound to eventually feel some envy over the fibers that grow out of somebody else's head. Though, we're not always stuck with one kind of hair, because hair changes. I was born a blonde. When I was 10, I dyed my hair green. I was aiming for blue, and when it grew out, it was brown. Been that way ever since. Though note, I don't think the hair dye cursed me. My mom grew up with really bright red hair, had me, and her hair turned brown afterwards. It just runs in the family. Some people lose their hair or it goes gray. But ironically, while we may envy other people's hair, it's difficult to imagine anyone welcoming changes to their natural hair with open arms. We associate too much of ourselves with the hair we've got to let it go so easily. Suffice to say, our relationship with our natural hair is almost always complicated. While the kind of natural hair we have is relatively immutable, the way we style and cut it is endless, and the culture of hair is endlessly interesting. People spend their entire lives learning how to manipulate the follicles on our head into different shapes, colors, and lengths. The variety of potential hairs is betrayed by the variety of names we have for these professionals. Hair cutters, barbers, stylists, beauticians, cosmetologists, hairdressers, coiffeurs. They all mean the same thing, and they all mean completely different things, don't they? Our relationship with our hairstylists is interesting. We have ample time to talk to them, so we might come to view them as a friend or a confidant. They hold, though, a strange power over our appearance, so we may feel compelled to fear or control their actions. We might admire them for their ability to do something that we cannot, or we might be thankful to them for making us prettier. On the flip side, we might hate them if they mess up. I do not envy hairdressers. I would never want that much responsibility over something so important. My longest tenured cosmetologist was my mom, who cut my hair for most of my childhood. To my knowledge, she was never trained as a beautician, though she knew her way around scissors as a seamstress. I know she did her best, and stylists cost money, so why not do it at home? But I've harbored a lifelong fear of haircuts, and I think part of the reason is the inconsistent results from my mom's unprofessional stylings. Sometimes it came out well, but other times it came out poorly. The unpredictability of what I'd look like after generated an unhealthy disdain for any change to my hair at all. The last time my mom cut my hair was in high school, and I hated how it looked. It was a bit lopsided and way too layered, so my curls were wispy and created a halo around my head. The next day at school, I was met with shocked reactions. My friend Elizabeth remarked she liked it because it was strange, but when she realized I hated it, she asked who did it and told me to go back and get it fixed. Embarrassed, I lied and told her I got it done at Cost Cutters, where I went that week to get it fixed. I just couldn't throw my mom under the bus like that. Though, I guess I'm here doing the chucking 14 years later. Sorry, Mom. In any case, my mom's stylings produced a feeling of dread around haircuts in me, but that dread was probably less motivated by her snips and more by my gender identity. As a transgender girl, and then woman, who spent most of her life in the closet, it makes sense that getting boys' haircuts would cause anxiety and strife within me. Every time my hair was cut, somebody pressed a restart button on my ability to present as a girl, which is a stupid sentiment, but one that makes sense to an 8-year-old. For years, I yearned to have long hair, but I was constantly cut off by adults in charge, particularly men policing gender roles. They would badger me to fix what was wrong with my appearance. When I got some modicum of control over my hair in high school, I immediately grew it out and kept it long. Prior to that autonomy, I wore hats my entire youth to obscure my short hair. So outside of picture day photos, I have little to no images of myself as a child where my hair is uncovered. I hated it then, but today that hatred at least affirms that I always experienced gender dysphoria, even if that's not what I knew to call it at the time. As an adult, I went through the same cycle with my hair over and over. I would grow it out because I hate haircuts. It would look terrible because hair looks bad if you don't even trim it for a year. I'd finally admit to needing a cut, go a few months knowing I need to schedule one and feeling guilty about that. Finally, call a place or do a walk-in where I feel nervous the entire time and hate how I look after. I've always had an aversion to telling hairdressers even what to do with my hair. I give an idea or two, but ask them to just kind of make it look good. When I go to restaurants, I love to ask for and order the waiter's recommendation rather than make a choice. That's a nice sentiment because it gets me outside my culinary comfort zone. When I essentially do the same thing and abdicate responsibility for how I'm gonna look for the next 12 months, it suggests I don't want to be accountable for looking a way I don't like. All those haircuts turned out fine. Even when I lived in China and had to tell Asian barbers who had likely never cut curly hair to go wild, it still looked nice. Yet, no matter how nice it looked in a vacuum, it wasn't how I wanted to look. What's worse is I would get used to the ugly way my hair would look, so when I got it cut, I wouldn't even recognize myself in the mirror. So every haircut reset, even kind of feeling comfortable with the way I looked. It might be reasonable to assume that since I came out as trans, these issues would resolve themselves. But my anxiety and dysphoria around haircuts has actually grown. Back then, I had nothing to lose at the hairdresser. I didn't like the way I looked, and after the haircut, I continued to dislike it, so big whoop. Now I feel my hair looks pretty femme and helps me come across as a woman, so people would know my gender at a glance. I like my hair now, but it needs to be trimmed because why wouldn't I want to look nicer? Yet I'm terrified a hairdresser will cut my hair too short or too masculine. I even have fears that someone will come up behind me with scissors and just cut my hair in big clumps against my will as some kind of vengeance for trespassing conservative gender norms. I know that is technically a crime, assault to be particular, but you have to ask, if I know that cutting someone's hair like that is legally assault, what does that tell you about the amount of energy I've spent worrying about it happening to me? Truth is, no one's going to do that. And truth is, hairstylists know what they're doing. I've been getting cuts with a non-binary beautician, which means they understand how hair can carry extra significance to people in the LGBTQ community, and they make me feel comfortable and at ease when I'm in the barber's chair. If you can't tell, the impetus for this video was that I got a haircut. It was the boldest I've ever been at the stylist. So bold, because I got bangs and a little bit of a shag. I've never had bangs before. I do like them, even if it's taking me some time to get used to it. Ironically, the haircut, which was last week, was one of the worst haircut experiences I've ever had, but not because of the outcome or anything my hairdresser did, but because I got sick during the cut. I started to have these hot flashes, and I had to go lie down on the bathroom floor multiple times to try to cool off and not pass out. Yet my fear of the hair salon proves to be unfounded. Even in the worst circumstances, everyone was kind and generous with me, and my hair turned out great, and I had the least anxiety around the actual cutting of the hair I've ever felt in my life. There are a million reasons you shouldn't be worried about the outcome of a haircut, right? It'll grow back. It'll probably doesn't look as bad as you think. You can always get it restyled, or in the end, it's just hair, right? It's not life or death. The big change for me, though, hasn't been to care less about my hair. The issue was that for so long I cared deeply about what my hair looked like, but couldn't admit to myself that I did. Instead, I accepted a false, inalienable truth, that my hair would always look incongruous with how I wanted to look. Now I know my hair matters to me, and that brings me joy and euphoria. While I still have tonsure phobia, probably will for the rest of my life, I feel much more prepared to cut my hair because I've actually processed how I feel about it and more clearly understand the stakes. I know that's not the case for all phobias, but I wonder how many things we're scared of we could work through if we accept that it matters to us, rather than attempt to minimize its importance. We can then tell ourselves, yes, I'm afraid of going in there and getting my hair cut, but I'm going in anyway, because, not in spite of, its importance to me. Good luck with whatever you're afraid of. I'll see you next week.
Oh yeah, for those having trouble understanding what the heck is going on in this shot, this is supposed to be like a confessional booth and a closet at the same time. Let's get going. You know, I don't talk about it much on this channel, but I'm a pretty religious person. So religious, in fact, that I spent 2 years as a full-time missionary. I've gone to countless church services, shared my testimony with hundreds of people, and been part of religious communities for nearly all of my adult life. For me, religion and spirituality aren't just something I pay lip service to. They're aspects of my life on this planet that are deeply inform who I am. I am also a transgender woman and lesbian. The apparent incongruity of these two identities is not lost on me. In contemporary American society, the most motivated and energetic anti-LGBTQ contingent are religious people, whose personal beliefs seem to demand they oppose any semblance of equality for queer people. Balancing my emotional reaction to our contemporary political reality is tricky. As a religious person, I feel shame when conservative Christians work so tirelessly to deny queer rights. As a queer person, though, I'm afraid of how new anti-science, transphobic, homophobic laws, rulings, or executive orders might impact my life. I'm also scared some zealot with hate in their heart will hurt or kill me because of who I am and what religion they follow. This video is a rudimentary attempt to discuss what it's like to be gay and religious, why contemporary religious life is so animated against us LGBTQ folks, and why some queer people might choose to remain religious despite a world set to disorient that aspect of our identities. I don't think I'm going to come to any clear answers to these questions, but if you're curious about this topic and come from one side or the other, you might learn something. And also, short note, I'm going to be primarily discussing religion, which is organized communal belief. Spirituality, or an individual sense of God or something beyond us, is important, but it's not our starting point here, so please keep that in mind as we talk. In my experience, people are religious for two primary reasons. Many live a religious life out of a reverence for tradition. These individuals don't sit down one day with a Bible, Quran, or Tripitaka, weigh the pros and cons of each option, and make a choice. No, they're born into a family or culture with a pre-existing religion and are motivated to participate in that religion due to their relationship with their community. The latter group, meanwhile, are motivated out of a desire to find meaning in their life. Without religion, they find themselves unable to sufficiently understand their purpose on this planet, and they search for some external system of belief to which adherence will improve their life in one way or another. No one is religious solely for one of these reasons, and people's motivations can definitely change over time. I've seen that happen. In fact, for most, it's usually some combination of both that spurs their devotion. Still, you'd be hard-pressed to find a religious person who doesn't end up falling into one of these camps. At a glance, I think most non-religious people might look a bit down on the traditional religious folks because of the uncritical way they come to faith. But that would be a mistake. Upholding tradition is a valuable and important part of human culture, and wanting to be part of your local community is a good thing. I don't view these people's faith as lesser because they come about it through tradition. Though, in my experience, the traditionally rooted religious person experiences their faith differently than the spiritually motivated individual. Most traditional religious folks treat religion as an important part of their life, one square on their lunch tray. Meanwhile, people who come to faith later in life from a lack of meaning and purpose tend to view their faith as the center of their existence, something everything else bends toward. I came to faith in this way. While I went to a Lutheran school until 8th grade, neither my mom nor dad were religious, and by the time I got to high school, I was an avowed atheist. Think like, mean internet atheist kind of person. I was also lonely and depressed. A friend, though, invited me to church. I got involved in a religious community. Spiritual beliefs, mentors, and peers helped me moderate my strong emotions, find purpose, and become the person talking to you today. I've sold religion with a more dramatic version of that story many times, but I'm not trying to sell you on anything today. That's just the basic facts of how I came to be a religious person in the first place.
I'm setting up this template so we might better understand religion's relationship to gender and sexuality. These kinds of people are historically more likely to be motivated to protect traditional gender roles, support racist structures like segregation, or institute a Christian nation of some kind rather than a secular one. To them, queer people, women wearing pants, or racial equality is a threat to their traditions, to their way of life. These beliefs are often muddled with additional economic or personal reasons for pushing back against the equality of others, but tradition plays an important role in both the person's religious and political lives. It also makes sense that these individuals might have a tendency toward nationalism, which is another sense of tradition they might believe in. Purpose-driven religious people, meanwhile, tend to split down the middle in their feelings about sex and gender. I hope many are like me, as in they get uncomfortable when religion is used to dictate how other people live their lives. For most of my time in organized religious spaces, I was part of congregations or organizations that weren't affirming to gay people. They didn't actively hate, but they still viewed homosexuality as a sin. Yet my stance the entire time wasn't that we should pray the gay away, but that if I encountered a queer person who wanted a religious connection, that I'd direct them toward a church that would accept their identity for who they are. The animosity from the church toward gay people always frustrated me, and I've talked to many strident religious folks who feel the same. It makes sense to me that those who come to religion like I did might feel like this. I view religion as something I came to by choice because it helps me. I don't have a desire to force those beliefs on other people. I never have, because such forcing wasn't helpful at all to me when I experienced this as a child, and it's the fact that religion was a choice that made it important to me in the first place. The other half of purpose-driven people, though, are maybe the most actively hostile toward the gay community. Remember, these people's lives are centered around their religion, and they believe that they have the answers everyone needs. They are highly passionate about what their religion teaches and are highly unlikely to change their mind about what they believe or how society should be constructed. The tradition-motivated individual can be convinced to care less about these religious issues by appealing to some other form of tradition, changing norms, or if their understanding of their tradition changes. Remember, for these folks, religion is just one part of their lunch tray. That's not to say they are easily swayed, just that they desire continuity, and if they view holding a traditional belief as threatening to cohesion, they're more likely to give it up. Meanwhile, purpose-driven homophobes are more likely to view queer people as an existential threat to what they believe is the most important thing in the world. So they've got a lot to lose, their purpose and meaning in life. So of course they're more likely to react strongly to us queers. I've spent a lot of time now drawing up these categories, but I want you to remember that just like how sexuality and gender are spectrums, so too is religious belief. I've given you some templates for understanding the motivations of religious people, but they aren't gospel. They're just tools for understanding why people believe and act in the ways that they do. These groups are animated toward hate through different means. Tradition-motivated religious people are more easily riled up by politicians or nominally secular hate groups who often use their audience's pre-existing religious beliefs as a way to gain votes, attention, and funding. The tradition-motivated person is more likely to have a gut-negative reaction to queer people because we violate their sense of norms, and it's that gut reaction that those malefactors leverage for their own goals. If you're a queer person hoping to reach the tradition-motivated religious homophobe in your life, you've got a couple options. I would not stress a fundamental religious argument with them. I wouldn't point out that if Jesus was around today, he'd probably be hanging with the gays. Or that if we look at a historical understanding of the various points in the Bible which discuss sex and gender, they're rooted in a cultural context that we've long since lost, thus rendering their particular beliefs a bit mute. The traditional religious person just isn't motivated to change their beliefs through more scholarly or textual discussion. Instead, I would aim in a few other directions. You could appeal to another sense of tradition to supplant the religious belief, such as national, familial, or communal. Many tradition-minded people change their mind about queer folks if they get the sense that being gay or trans is normal. It might take some work to get them there, but if you can introduce them to other queer people, and yes, I know that's dangerous, be safe, books, or media which reflect queer experiences, or just talk them through why you feel the way you do and why it's important to you and how their negation of your queer identity affects you, I think these people's desire for relational cohesion will win out over their religious beliefs, at least over time. It takes work, and you have to decide if that work is worth it. But if it is, try to identify the source of their discomfort with the gays and aim to undermine that source while giving them a plausible new tradition to buy into. If you believe someone is more driven by religious purpose, you're either going to have a good time or a real bad time. I have family members who are deeply religious and spiritual, like work at a church religious, who have little outward problem accepting me into the fold. They don't misgender or dead name me, and our relationships are as strong as ever. I don't think they approve of me being queer or trans, but I also don't think they believe I have to live by their beliefs. So that's easy. Other folks, though, not so easy. These folks have religious leaders breathing down their neck, telling them exactly how they should or shouldn't react to queer people, and that's a nigh impossible hurdle to overcome. I can tell you that some people driven by religious purpose struggle to know what to do with me. Some just avoid me at all costs. Some try to talk me out of it. Some decide that they just won't accept my new identity at all. Some of these people, though, I've made the decision to love them, and I want them to be part of their life. To reach them, I'm playing the long game. For me, being gay is normal, so every time we're together, I communicate how normal it is for me. Essentially, I'm trying to turn these latter folks into the former folks, help them understand that I'm happy, spiritually enriched, and better off as a queer person. In years leading up to coming out as trans, I could feel my relationship with my religion change. For a while, I was quite sure that my religion was the one everyone needed to adopt, hence the whole missionary thing. But even like 5 years before I was out, I started feeling that was a misguided position. Instead, I understood that religion helped me, and that was the important thing. Maybe it was the only way to God, maybe it wasn't, but that wasn't what really mattered to me. What mattered was that it helped me sort things out. I also stopped literally reading the Bible so seriously. Ironically, that came not from a wishy-washy desire to just believe whatever I want, but because I did more research into academic biblical study and realized a lot of what I'd been taught about reading the Bible was biased, ahistorical, and motivated by contemporary cultural concerns. This made the foundations of my religious beliefs smaller, not less sturdy or important, mind you, but the amount of foundational beliefs I felt I needed to be a Christian shrunk to what was the most important ones, consistently repeated across the religion and significant for me as a person. Around the same time, my relationship to the broader Christian community became frayed. The election of Donald Trump was an inflection point for many American Christians, and I'm no different. When I understood just how much other Christians were motivated to vote for someone who embodies none of the characteristics my religion is supposed to cultivate, just so they could win political points, keep a woman out of the White House, ban abortion, or whatever, I just felt a supreme disconnect from other religious people and started to feel unsafe in religious communities, at least to express myself. Thus, I began to emotionally distance myself from other Christians. Around that time, my wife started thinking differently about her faith, so we both withdrew from communal religious life, and I don't think COVID helped either. Now we're out as a gay couple, and going back into religious spaces is tricky at best. When I came out as trans, so many of my religious acquaintances jumped into action. They wanted to ask me questions about what was going on, have long conversations to understand it. But as time has passed, they seem to have little interest in relationship with me if they can't convince me I'm not actually trans. I think my queerness represents a real conflict for religious people I know personally, in part because just as tradition-motivated people tend to flock together, so too do purpose-driven folks. So most of the Christians I've made relationships with in my life are like me. They are driven mostly by a religious purpose rather than tradition. On one hand, I think these people love me and care about me. We've lived life together and cared about each other in meaningful ways. They want what's best for me and earnestly believe I'm harming myself and those around me by going against God's will. But that's on a personal level. I want to reiterate that those who don't know me, don't know queer people, they don't come at it with any nuance. They just view us as delusional sinners corrupting God's kingdom, and their greatest desire for us is to no longer exist. Not necessarily in a genocidal way, but it often manifests like that, doesn't it? And that's scary. But I know I have no influence over how broader religious society feels about me. The best I can do is reach around my circle and hope that it does something. The deep irony is that I don't feel any conflict between my religion and sense of self. The important tenets of my religion that inform my life, pacifism, forgiveness, helping those in need, being a moral person, repenting my mistakes, unconditional love from God and for others, these are all wonderful, and I try my best to live my life by those principles. They have little to do with me being queer, other than the fact that if I lied about my gender and sexuality, I wouldn't be loving myself, and I'd be lying to others, which goes against my religious beliefs. When religious people hear me say that I have no conflict between my beliefs and being gay, I don't think that they take me seriously, but it's true. I have gay religion, and I'm happy about it. It can be frustrating to live in both these worlds. Religious people don't view me as one of their own because I couldn't be serious about my faith if I didn't come to the same conclusions about their religious traditions as they did. Meanwhile, it's rightfully difficult to chat with other queer people about this stuff because we've been so deeply harmed by religious people in the past. In the end, the difficulty in rectifying these two halves of myself has nothing to do with either half. External forces seem to pit my queerness and religiosity against each other, but they're simply two parts of me. Just as I'm a mother and a wife, part my mom and part my dad, a college instructor and a YouTuber, I'm also gay and religious. Both dictate who I love and who I am, and they work in synchronicity to arrive at Evelynn, who wouldn't exist without either of them. Thanks for checking in to hear my thoughts on this. I'll see you next week. Alright, well, shooting this video was definitely a mistake, but we gotta do it now. What's the story behind you and your favorite TV show? Did you tune in on day one to the first season and watch Mr. Robot live? Did you discover Seinfeld through old reruns on TBS? Perhaps you binge-watched Stranger Things in a weekend, and that was that. You probably remember the first time you watched your favorite show, that moment of potential when you didn't know just what you were going to get into, didn't know the hours and days of your life that would be consumed watching episode after episode, purchasing trinkets with your favorite characters, going to fan conventions, watching YouTube videos about its themes. However you came by it, you likely have a fairly innocuous beginning. You must have thought you'd like it, right, to start watching. Must have assumed something good was in store, only to have your prediction turn more right than you could ever imagine. Not me. My favorite television show is the Cartoon Network animated series Adventure Time. You may see me as a youngish adult who viewed it as a child or preteen and fell in love, but I'm actually 90, so that wasn't it. No, Adventure Time came out when I was kind of a child, well, 18, so I guess an adult, and yet I have no nostalgia for it. In fact, I missed the entirety of its run on live television, hating it from afar, poison dripping from my heart. I was actively hostile to this well-reviewed and beloved television series. Not because I watched it and found it loathsome, not because I couldn't stand some character, not because the creator killed my dog, but because of pride. I was too proud to enjoy Adventure Time, and that was until 2023. So I thought today we'd have a fun little story time about how pride kept me from my favorite TV show. My relationship with Adventure Time began sometime in 2008, 2 years before it actually premiered on television. I was a sophomore in high school and friends with this junior, Colin. Colin was a slacker but super intelligent. Both loners with a love for anime and Kurt Vonnegut, we gravitated toward each other. We watched entire seasons of TV together in his living room with 2 or 3 dozen birds watching along. We made fun line writer courses on our home computers. We went for long walks. 2008 was also the heyday of early YouTube, and Colin and I would show each other all sorts of wonderfully stupid videos we found on the platform. One day, Colin told me I needed to see this strange animation. It was the pilot / short film Adventure Time. Immediately, I fell in love. Colin and I quoted it all the time. It was the basis for many of our inside jokes. I particularly remember the line, "You've been transported back in time and to Mars." That thing lived rent-free in my head for a long time. The whole pilot had this radical energy, and I must have watched it dozens of times, both with Colin and without. It was probably my favorite video on the internet for some time. Oops, that was backwards. Oh well. Later on that year, Colin and I were driving around town. He was at the wheel and I was in the back seat with his then recently ex-girlfriend Sarah. It was maybe a month before prom and the two had planned to go together before they broke up. At some point, Colin stopped the car, turned around and said to us, "Evelynn, you should take Sarah to prom." You can immediately see the bind Colin put me in here. Here was this girl recently rejected by this guy, now propositioning a friend to go on a kind of romantic dance together. I was a little overwhelmed and embarrassed, but I didn't want Sarah to experience further rejection, even if it was from a lowly queer freak like me. So I said sure. I'd been to the Sadie Hawkins dance a few months prior, so I already had the right clothes for the occasion. Sarah and I then went to prom together and we had a great time. Someone else in our prom party's date didn't show up, so I actually ended up taking 2 people that night. I would go on to eventually date that mysterious girl twice. Though that's a story, or 2 stories for another time. I stayed over at Sarah's house that night and we watched Fear.com. Next morning we had a squirt gun fight. None of that is euphemisms. We were just 2 celibate teenagers enjoying some time together. While I had a great time going to prom as Sarah's friend, Colin's action in the car created a bit of a rift between us, and he was always a pretty transient fellow anyway, so our relationship kind of ran its course. But I always associated Adventure Time with him and that period of my life, even if I stopped thinking about it for a few years. Then, in 2010, I was over at Ross's house. I've got some good stories about Ross, and I'll tell you those sometime too, but they're not important right now. It was late in the afternoon after a day of school, and Ross flipped on the TV to his new obsession. Lo and behold, it was Adventure Time. Immediately, I felt like something was wrong. The main character's name was changed. The animation was cleaned up and a little less unique or personal. The zany energy of the short was still there, but quite muted. It just wasn't Adventure Time to me. After we watched 2 episodes, Cartoon Network transferred us to some other program, and Ross asked me what I thought. Embarrassed and disappointed, I didn't know exactly what to say to him. I told him I loved the short film it was based off of. This one just didn't hit the mark for me. Ross hadn't seen the pilot, and that pilot up there is having a good time. So we went and watched it together, and that short viewing, I should have liked it. Wow, that's a loud plane. But instead, all I could think about how the full show wasn't like the short. And then something clicked in me. I would never like this new Adventure Time. It wasn't necessarily because I wasn't friends with Colin anymore. It wasn't because it was so different than the original short. And it wasn't because Ross liked it. I liked Ross. He was great. I wanted to like it for his sake. No, I decided I would not watch Adventure Time because I was too proud to admit to liking it, as if liking this new show would somehow diminish the greatness of the pilot I already loved. I hated the show on principle. The pilot was better. This show shouldn't exist, at least not like this. Every time for the ensuing decade, Adventure Time came up in conversation, which wasn't that often. I'd explained that I'm sure it's a good show, but I thought the pilot was way better, and I wouldn't bother to show people the pilot, but that was just where I was at. Then in 2022, I got my first kid. A year and a half later, I was browsing HBO Max looking for something to watch together. Now, they were 1 year old at the time, so they weren't actually really paying attention. I was just really looking for some kids' television for me to watch. I was already a fan of Steven Universe, which was a spiritual and production descendant of Adventure Time, so we decided to bite the bullet and put on a few episodes. The same first few episodes I watched with Ross back in 2010. I was intrigued, but what really kept me coming back was the short episode lengths. I could throw on Adventure Time for 10 minutes before bed, or while we ate lunch together, once in a while, at least. We probably only watched an episode a day, but it was better than the similarly length Bluey, which is a good show, by the way. Don't come at me with your... Don't defend Bluey to me. I don't care about your Bluey takes, okay? By the middle of the 3rd season, I knew I loved Adventure Time, and I looked forward to each viewing. but it wasn't my favorite show or anything. Then around last October, we got through season 4, where the show really gets more emotional and mature and interesting. I cried during some of those episodes, particularly Remember You. I was entranced. By the end of January, we watched every episode of the show. I cried during the finale. I cried during a lot of episodes, to be honest. Bimo and Marceline, they were these great characters that really made me feel these deep emotions because I resonated with them. Before we finished, I knew Adventure Time was my favorite TV show. This summer, we've started watching it all over again, and I know I'm going to be watching it for the rest of my life, and that feeling is good. Now, I could make a video, an elaborate review, perhaps, of Adventure Time. Something multiple hours long with interesting connecting threads and beautiful ideas. Maybe I will someday, but this is not that video. This is the video where airplanes fly overhead constantly. And so I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna keep them in though. I don't know why. You just gonna have to deal with the airplanes this time. Just this time though. Next time I'll cut out the airplanes, okay? I'm not here to talk about why I love the show so much, why it made me cry on so many occasions, or why you should like it too. I don't actually care today if you like Adventure Time, though you should. It's a good show. No, what I care about is the story of how I fell in love with my favorite TV show. I was so proud for so many years of having loved Adventure Time first, before anyone else, before it blew up, when it was just this secret thing between a friend and I. I couldn't enjoy the show then for what it was. When I was young, my enjoyment of books, films, games, TV shows, and even people was so dictated by these meta thoughts, these pre-experiences of the thing before I ever actually experienced them. It ruined my ability to just enjoy some great art. If so-and-so liked it, maybe I'd go in with too high expectations. Sometimes I dislike media on principle, like Adventure Time, especially if someone else thought it was something I was going to like. Knowing that they knew me, assumed my taste, made me feel uncomfortable. I realize now, many people are like how I was. We cling to these pre-perceptions and their odd demands. We believe the ourselves who hasn't experienced the thing's opinions over the someone else who has. I'm sure you could come up with some philosophical, psychological, or biological reason we're so inclined toward this path, but the important thing isn't how we get there, it's how stupid it all is. We miss out on art we might love, what might turn into our favorite TV show or video game. We missed that opportunity, not because it didn't cross our path, but because we were too proud to try it in the first place. I got lucky, and maybe I did find Adventure Time at just the right moment in my life to fall in love with it, but maybe I could have loved it much sooner, experienced the finale live, been part of that fan culture when it was most active. Maybe dozens of other potential favorites are waiting in the wings if only I wasn't so stuck in my own pre-perception. I've known this truth for a long while, longer than I've loved Adventure Time. I don't watch movie trailers, usually don't read reviews. I actually haven't even watched any video essays on Adventure Time yet. I try to find people I trust to give me good opinions, and then I take them at their word. But the vestiges of my old life kept me from my now favorite TV show. I've still got room to grow, and you do too. So next time you decide to pre-dislike something or catch yourself holding an opinion not because of your experience but your expected experience of a thing, put it in a drawer and forget about it. Let your experiences be your own, not the idea of an experience you conjured up in the state of disappointment, or else that disappointment may turn into sincere, if unperceived, regret. Go watch an episode of Adventure Time for me. I recommend What Was Missing, which is where this outfit came from. I'll see you next week. In Yasujiro Ozu's 1949 masterpiece, Late Spring, Chishu plays an aging widower with an unmarried daughter who's old enough for that to be a problem, I guess. So he convinces her to get married to a wonderful man. At the end of the film, the widower finishes the wedding festivities and returns to his house. The once vibrant home of familial connection now lays empty, a touching image of what the widower sacrificed to provide a more vibrant future for his daughter. It's so bittersweet, and then the movie just ends. It's beautiful. I love it. Meanwhile, in Yasujiro Ozu's 1962 masterpiece, An Autumn Afternoon, Chishu Ryu plays an aging widower with an unmarried daughter who's old enough for that to be a problem, I guess. So he successfully convinces her to get married to a wonderful man. At the end of the film, the widower finishes the wedding festivities and returns to his house, and that once vibrant home of familial connection now lays empty, a touching image of what the widower sacrificed to provide a more vibrant future for his daughter. It's so bittersweet, and the movie just ends. It's beautiful. I love it. Yasujiro Ozu was no foreigner to telling the same story twice. In 1959, he remade his own 1932 film about farts, I Was Born But, as Good Morning. And again in 1959, he remade his own 1934 film, A Story of Floating Weeds, as Floating Weeds. Yet in both of those cases, the earlier films were silent, black and white, pre-war films, whereas his later ones were sound and in color. Meanwhile, Late Spring and Autumn Afternoon are both post-war sound films from the best director of all times, most productive, beloved era. No one, to my knowledge, considers An Autumn Afternoon a remake of Late Spring because, well, it's not. But the similarities of their plots are impossible to miss and are particularly highlighted by Chishu Ryu's appearance in the lead role of both films. So today, I'd like to talk about why I love these films, and more importantly, how they convey completely different messages despite having almost the exact same plot. Let's start with Late Spring, since it came out first. You've probably never heard of it, and that's okay, but people do seem to love it. In 2012, it was voted the 15th best film of all time by Sight and Sound, and it probably deserves that honor. If you want to read way too many synopses of themes of a movie where just about 3 things happen, check out the Wikipedia page. I've already given you the gist of the film, but it follows a father and his daughter, Noriko. Noriko is 27 and lives with her dad, performing basic household duties, cleaning, shopping, cooking. Essentially, she performs the role of wife and assistant to her professor father. Now, you might expect from this arrangement that Noriko would want to get out from under her father's thumb, but in fact, she loves this arrangement and is overly protective of her father. Noriko is particularly motivated by societal norms, and early in the film she chastises one of her father's colleagues for remarrying in his old age, which she finds distasteful. Noriko seems defensive at the very idea of change, hating that she might get married and move away from her father someday, or that he might get married and move away from her. Shukichi, the father, is initially oblivious to the entire situation. Like his daughter, he's happy with the status quo, but his sister and others pressure him into finding a suitor for his daughter. Upon suggesting a familiar face to her, Noriko laughs. He's already engaged. Still, as he broaches the subject further, he finds staunch resistance from her end. Not because arranged marriage is a pretty funky proposition, no, that's treated as normal within the world of both films. Nor because the suitor isn't a good match. No, he's handsome, looks like Gary Cooper. Shukichi then forces her hand by seemingly making advances toward another elderly widow, much to Noriko's disgust. Motivated by the fact that a new woman is moving into her father's life, further instigating change, she meets this potential suitor, likes him well enough, and on a short vacation changes her mind about marriage. Finally, the wedding day arrives, and Noriko leaves her father, happily moving across the country. Then Shukichi drops his trump card while talking with a friend. He never intended to marry that old widow. He only made it seem like that so his daughter would move on with her life. The film treats this act as a wily old man's sincere deception so his daughter can have a full life. The father then arrives at his now abandoned home alone, but with a sense of almost smug satisfaction, as though the trickster got his last laugh in, even if now he sits alone, knowing his life will be irredeemably worse without his beloved daughter around. As I already said, I love Late Spring. It's impossible to convey to you just how beautiful the camera work is or how heartfelt the script is. These characters are just as well developed and as interesting as you'll ever find in cinema. Yet the reason the ending resonates with me is how satisfied the father is in doing the right thing, even though it's an awful sacrifice for him to make personally. I found in life that Shukichi's story is potent and sincere. I do things I know will leave me more drained or potentially hurt, but will benefit others in ways that I believe matter more than my own comfort. Usually, when such sacrifice is represented on film, it's done so in this weird Christ-like life and death way, like Iron Man sacrificing himself for the greater good with the Infinity Gauntlet kind of shit. Here though, such presuppositions are thrown to the wind. A man now must live alone for the rest of his life. It's not pretty, it's not particularly cathartic, it just is. And the fact that he can live with that decision and be content with it means the world to me. Now for An Autumn Afternoon, which is not as critically esteemed as Late Spring, but is particularly notable for being Ozu's last film before his death. It's also far more pessimistic than its twin. In it, the dad's now Shuhei and the daughter's now Michiko. The most immediate change between the films can be found in the family dynamic. This dad's got 3 kids, an unmarried son and daughter, and a married son. The film particularly focuses on Michiko and Shuhei, just like the other one, but the other 2 siblings, Koichi and Kazuo, play important foils to the concept of love and marriage. Like in Late Spring, the previously oblivious father now wants to marry off his daughter due to societal pressure, but the daughter is reticent due to her love for her family. Unlike Late Spring, this turn happens way later in the movie. Shuhei only decides to marry her off after he meets an old spinster who hates her dad and decides he doesn't want that fate. Meanwhile, Michiko, who's hesitant at first, gives up the ghost relatively quickly compared to her Late Spring counterpart. What the film lacks in the nuances of father-daughter plotting, it makes up for in exploring other relationships. Shuhei goes through a potent period of additional mourning when he meets a bartender who looks just like his dead wife, and then he becomes a regular at her bar because of the comfort that being around her gives him. Meanwhile, Koichi, the eldest son, is in a terribly unhappy marriage. Both he and his wife argue constantly about money and purchase items behind each other's backs. Ultimately, they resent each other because of it. They don't break up or anything, but it's difficult to call their relationship satisfying in any meaningful way, and their conflict is just not resolved. They seem to just put up with each other, and that will never change because they're both more focused on finding their own solitary happiness than working toward one together. Overall, An Autumn Afternoon is populated with these little vignettes of failed relationships, and a common refrain binding them, repeated quite a few times across the film's duration, is that, in the end, we spend our lives alone. In each relationship, other than the father and daughter one, this seems to be true. These people are miserable in relationships, off on their own little islands. Meanwhile, the dad and Michiko actually like each other and have a good time. Giving that up in such a world seems almost criminal. Yet the father does it, this time without any deception or trickery, just by suggesting it strongly enough. Thus, in the final scene, he can't return home with a triumphant grin. Instead, he's drunk and depressed. He sings a song from his war days, perhaps when he felt least alone, and then turns to himself, or us, and asks, "Alone, eh?" before going back to singing about his poor fate. Rather than the life-affirming sacrifice of his similar-faced predecessor, An Autumn Afternoon questions the validity of the sacrifice, or whether it was even a sacrifice at all, because, after all, we're going to end up alone anyways. I love this conclusion in a completely opposite fashion than Late Spring. It's melancholic and dismal. It shows a side of humanity, a side of myself that I often try to neglect, a pessimism about us, our relationships, our nature. Maybe we aren't good people trying to do good things. Maybe we're just lonely freaks making choices and ending up more lonely because of them. It's so potent and deadly in emotion. And the film, through its many characters, earns such a devastating finale. No real silver lining, just cold loneliness splashed across our faces. Comparing these films proves tricky. Which does Ozu believe? Is he an optimist who views self-sacrifice as a kind of virtue and writes full-throated monologues about the beauty of marriage and love? Or is he a pessimist who thinks we'll all be lonely in the end? You could say that Late Spring's endurement as a monumental film suggests the more important takeaway. You could also argue that Ozu, sober-minded in the final years of his life, either changed or revealed his true thoughts on humankind in An Autumn Afternoon. I think neither, and both. The thing is, Michiko and Noriko aren't real. They're representations of aspects of our lives. We're not destined for love or loneliness. They're just both equal parts of what it means to be human. And the same story can end up in one lane or the other, depending on context. And most stories are bound to be some mix of both. I find that contrast beautiful and worth understanding, worth exploring, and it's why Ozu's films stick with me in a way few others do. They reveal the nuances and depths of our emotional lives with a gentle, understanding compassion. Ozu doesn't judge us for being pessimistic or dour, but he is interested in how we got there, why we are the way we are. In his exploration, I see bits and pieces of myself strewn about, and he helps me understand me better. At the end of Late Spring, Shukichi, in an attempt to sell Noriko on marriage, explains, "Marriage may not mean happiness from the start. To expect such immediate happiness is a mistake. Happiness isn't something you wait around for. It's something you create yourself. Getting married isn't happiness. Happiness lies in the forging of a new life shared together. It may take a year or two, maybe even 5 or 10. Happiness only comes through effort. Only then can you claim to be man and wife." Ultimately, I don't believe Ozu thinks we're all alone in the end. He thinks we're just ready to believe it, and worse, we make the worlds we believe in. We create the happiness for ourselves, but we also create the loneliness. Do we have full control? No, of course not. But we do hold the most sway over ourselves. You're going to put energy into one emotion or another. So my question for you then is this. What emotions are you putting effort into today? And who are they making you out to be? I'll be chewing on that until I die. Perhaps alone, perhaps happy, perhaps both. See you next week.
Hello, and welcome to a new kind of video essay experience where I try to live play video games while reading from a script. It's gonna go terribly. Let's have some fun. All right, so the name of this one is Video Games Don't Surprise Me Anymore, and every paragraph will switch games. But so we're starting with Tetris, played on a fast speed because I like to torture myself. So, I was a late bloomer for a lot of famous pop culture artifacts when I was a kid. For instance, I didn't know Michael Jackson's music for Michael Jackson's until probably in 2009, which is around the time when he died. Everyone was getting into him in 2009, because he was dead. So I listened to Thriller, the album, not the song, for the very first time. I was immediately grooved with the first track, which is Wanna Be Startin' Something, very good song, Wanna Be Startin' Something, so it's a fun tune. I recommend you listen to it. Near the end of that song, though, there's this not monumental, but really great moment where Jackson sings Mama Say, Mama Sa, Mama Musa. I love it. It's a great moment, but it surprised me when it happened, when that came up, when it came up in the song. And really, I've always remembered listening to that song for the first time because it crystallized a feeling I still hold to this day, which is that great art surprises us.
and now I can just let my Tetris go. I gotta switch games. So how art surprises us can take infinite forms. Great ambient music can have such incredible sonic depth that it astounds me, like Grouper or Aphex Twin. A good movie might have a wild plot twist, or it just might provide an idea to you that you've never had before. Game of Thrones, I think, was popular before its disastrous finale, in part because it shocked viewers. You know, people hadn't seen main characters die on screen that much before, and that shockingness, that surprise made it great in some sense. You know, not all shocking or surprising media is great, okay? I don't know, Dogtooth? Yeah, I don't want to watch that dog crap again. But a lot of times what surprises us, when you look at great media, the work was, at least when it was released, surprising in one way or another. And that ability to surprise, to delight an audience, is part of why people love media in the first place. It's what entices us to try new things, have conversations we've never had before, and make new art. Something we hope, or communicate to others some new art that we hope will be fresh to them. Completed 1-1. So I wish that this video was about how wonderful it is to be caught off guard by media, but instead this fancy preface is really just a road to a more pessimistic take, which is that video games don't surprise me anymore. Well, really, the initial idea I had for this video was, there we go. The initial idea I had for this video was that video games haven't surprised me lately. But that kind of nuanced take just ain't good for a YouTube title, so we're gonna skip it. So for this video, I want to talk about why I'm struggling to find games that really wow me, and what I want to do to try to remedy that. I've been playing a lot of games lately, more than I played in 2022 or 2023 when I was knee deep in a dissertation and making YouTube videos, which were both ironically about games, but I wasn't playing a lot of new games for the projects I was working on. So I just have had more time lately to test the waters with lots of new games. I played at least 17 new games this year, at least by my initial count when I was writing the script of this video. But I haven't been finding games that surprise me, other than like these Binding of Isaac flies. You may be thinking, well, stop playing the Call of Duties or Assassin's Creeds of the world. And of course, those games are, an old hat. But I haven't touched a mainline every year, a new release franchise in about probably a decade. You may also be thinking, well, hey, we'll stop with the live service games then, You should, try something other than old Hearthstone or, Counter-Strike or Genshin Impact. But I actually completely gave up on any live service games all the way back during the pandemic in 2020 because I wanted to have more fresh experiences with games, and I could tell that I just have a really addictive personality. It was really easy for me to play way too much League of Legends or whatever. Dota 2 actually was my real vice. This year, you may also be thinking, hey, stop playing AAA games. AAA games, those things suck. Stop playing them. But I've only played one AAA game this year, which is the new Elden Ring. So DLC, that is. No, these are almost all critically acclaimed indie games like Dave the Diver, Animal Well, Balatro, Hades 2, or Helldivers. Oh no, I don't want to die to this guy. Well, okay, Helldivers is not actually an indie game. It's kind of like a AA game, whatever that means. But none of the games I played this year have really stood out to me as feeling fresh and unique. They're not experiences that make me approach games in a new fashion. Yes, come on, we can do it. Yes, we did it. All right, new game. Two obvious reasons immediately jump out to me to explain my fatigued relationship with video games: personal change and industry trends. Regarding the latter, I do think video games are currently experiencing a kind of, I guess we'll call it a creative recession. as indicated because of the endless layoffs we keep hearing about. And no, I don't think that the people getting laid off aren't creative. I think that like video games are laying people off, and thus we're getting less creative or new ideas because they've got less people to work with to come up with those ideas. Game companies are tightening their belts, sticking more closely to tried and true products that they can try to sell to us. Where are we? It should really be described as new for them, though. Like Nexus of MapleStory fame, who made the best indie game of 2023. Right? That's not Dave the Diver isn't really a fresh or unique experience by that metric. Meanwhile, many critically acclaimed games of the past few years haven't just been sequels. Sequels happen all the time. Some sequels have been some of the most innovative games ever. They've been sequels made in the same engine and mold of previously successful games. Tears of the Kingdom is really just a new Breath of the Wild. Like God of War Ragnarok is quite a lot like God of War. Even Elden Ring, to me at least, mostly feels like a really big Dark Souls game. Perhaps the most surprising, gigantic release of 2023 was Baldur's Gate, which 3. And if it surprised you, I'm happy for your great experience. But as somebody who, I had already played Divinity 2, Larian Studios' previous outing, so BG3 didn't surprise me as much. It mostly felt more of the same, that kind of adventure game. And maybe that says something about me. That doesn't mean I don't like BG3, by the way. You should play BG3 if you haven't already. Actually right here, maybe I should read the script. Does this mean none of these games improved upon their predecessors? Absolutely not. 10-9, we need an 8. Wait, no, actually. Just need an 8. Okay. Oh, no. No. Does this mean that they're bad games? No. I think many of these games are great. Even surpassed their original incantations. Baldur's Gate 3 is one of the best games of the decade and worth loving. You should play it if you haven't already. Where are the 6s? Oh, there's an ace. There. Instead, it simply means that for me, they don't offer something I haven't gotten somewhere else before. Oh, that was a terrible line read. I'm so sorry, everybody. That phrase, for me, actually, undergirds the other obvious reason games haven't quite astounded me in recent years. I'm maybe a bit too wise to their tricks. Last month, I picked up the video game Another Crab's Treasure, which is a Souls-like, crab-like set under the sea, and I was excited to try it out because I like Souls games, and this one had a kind of like a cutesy aesthetic. But what I found was a pretty boring playtime that didn't do anything for me. And no, that's probably a great game. Again, when I say something didn't feel fresh or surprising to me, that doesn't mean it was bad. I think that my decade-plus experience playing insert Dark Souls-inspired game is wearing thin. I've got enough rolling in combat, bonfire save points, and tough boss fights for maybe a lifetime, but definitely enough for now. And so, I don't really need knockoffs to get my kicks. I can barely muster the interest to play the, new Elden Ring DLC, and not because of the difficulty. I actually found it terribly easy, but it just feels like more Elden Ring. If I wanted to play more Elden Ring, I could have just gone back and played Elden Ring, but I hadn't played it for 2 years. Most games that interest me follow this kind of trend. They feel so familiar. Another collectathon 3D platformer, another fun but repetitive FPS game, another fun and simple simulation game built on the same principles as Sid Meier's, as a Sid Meier game from 20 years ago. Another deck building roguelike, another action RPG roguelike, or another strategy roguelike. When I encounter these games, I usually think they're good. Should have had this on double speed, so sorry everybody. When I encounter these games, I usually think they're good, great even, but they are more of what I've already experienced. So maybe I've just experienced too much. Even Animal didn't ring any new bells. It felt a bit too much like the love child of Rainworld and Tunic for my tastes. Hades 2 which I played quite a bit of the last month, just feels like more Hades to me. Helldivers 2 just feels like playing a better version of The Division, but with bugs. I love the aesthetic of the game, but I don't love the gameplay loop. It just doesn't feel new. It doesn't feel fresh at all to me. I know this sounds like me complaining, but I'm not upset about this development. I'm just, feeling kind of sad about it. These games I've been playing, they're good. I just wish I could find games that fit my style while also delighting me in fresh ways. So let's slow down for a moment then, and let's talk about some games that I have actually really liked in recent years. This game's really confusing. I don't know why I picked it. Okay, so let's talk about some games that have amazed me in recent years. In 2020, I got an Oculus and a headset, and in part really just to play Half-Life Alyx, and that game floored me. It's one of the best VR experiences I've ever had, and the look, feel, and gameplay, they all hooked me. I think actually when I did my my live stream, I said it was the best game ever. I kind of believe that. It's a really good game. So I definitely consider it the finest game made this decade, in part because I've never experienced anything like that. So it just so constantly surprised me. Now, that's, though, a pretty unique kind of circumstance. Jumping into VR for the first time was bound to, give me something new to feel and think about. But, I felt these feelings from, games that are following pretty old tried and true formats. In 2021, I played Ultra Kill for the first time, and while it's formulaically a boomer shooter, it's also so much more than that. The intense speed and rhythm of the game took me by surprise, and whenever I boot it up, I feel great. I really love Ultra Kill. It's one of my favorite games I've ever played. I entered this kind of speed running or late game Tetris state of mind with hundreds of actions per minute as I fly through levels and process everything and react with no breaks. Are the controls or format of Ultra Kill unique? No, it's just a shooter game. No, but the way it uses those tools was fresh and really wonderful for me. It's not just shooters that surprised me. In 2020, I played Outer Wilds, one of the most thematically rich and interesting puzzle games I've ever played, that you could ever played. By the end of its narrative, I was in tears. And, and speaking of water coming out of my eyes, later that year, we made it back. Okay, good. Speaking of water coming out of my eyes, later that year, I played Before Your Eyes, whose central concept was novel. It's like when you blink, time jumps forward. It didn't overstay its welcome, but it packed one hell of a punch. And yeah, I love Before Your Eyes. That game's really good. If you haven't played it, you should play Before Your Eyes. A year earlier, I played through Celeste for the very first time. And that game, obviously, I love Celeste. It made me cry too. This is just the crying. These are the games that made me cry. Okay, if you don't like that, I don't know. You're at the wrong channel because I cry a lot. But Celeste made me think, about myself and the world around me differently. And this was before I even knew that the main character was trans, like I was. And so, I yearn to have experiences like I had there with Celeste and with Outer Wilds and with, Before Your Eyes, But the problem is this. It's like I can't just go back and play those games because oftentimes the same thing doesn't surprise you twice. Since 2021, the well has unfortunately been drying up for me. Zachtronics games like Exapunks and 21st Century Food Court, along with a few, along with like Omori, Venoneth, and Neon White, those games surprised me some, but they didn't stick with me in the profound way the games I just described to you did. They had I guess we could call them small surprises, but they weren't astounding. And I mean astounding in the sense of being surprising. Similarly, in 2023, I found a few gems. My favorite games of the year were probably Moon Remix RPG and Void Stranger. But while I loved those games, they don't compare too favorably to my favorite games of just a few years prior. Like I said, this year, I have been trying to find that spark. I actually bought a Steam Deck to play more games because they'd be more accessible to me, and I've been visiting games on consoles I've never owned, like the Sega Saturn or the Sega Genesis. I never really played any Sega consoles besides the Dreamcast before this year. I've been following the biggest indie releases, and nothing has really done it for me, which is, that's unfortunate. I could fall into two different forms of despair given this knowledge. Perhaps no good games are coming out anymore and never will. Perhaps I'm just done with video games. They aren't for me anymore. That's a sad. But I refuse to believe either of these notions. Video games are great, and great games that can wow me as much as my old favorites are still out there being made. And they're waiting for me to find them. I just need to figure out a new way to come across them. That's where you, humble viewer, come in. This video is only going to exist for a week, but when you see it, I want you to recommend to me a game that you've been playing, that you've played recently. One which came out in the last 5 years, and most importantly, surprised you. Surprised you in a genuine way that delighted you. If you haven't noticed, I did in this video purposefully give you a sense of some of my favorite games in recent years. Some stuff you can kind of base your recommendations on. So use that as a springboard if you want to try to match my tastes. Don't recommend me, by the way, a dozen games. Be decisive and choose the best game which fits this criteria. The game that surprised you the most, okay? What I'm going to do is, this is the fun part, I'm going to comb through all of these recommendations in this video, and I'm going to pick 3 or 4 of them. I'm going to purchase those games with sweet Patreon money. Also note, patrons, your recommendations are going to count double. I'm not necessarily going to pick them, but obviously, patrons, they give me money. I gotta be nice to you guys. So anyways, when I buy those games, I'm going to play them, and I'm going to make a video next month, an ephemeral Evelynn video like this one, where I talk about the experience of playing these games. I talk about if they surprise me, what I learned from playing them. And to get us kickstarted, I'm going to give my own suggestion to myself, which is I'm going to play through Disco Elysium. I actually purchased Disco Elysium the month it came out, so I've actually had it for a very, very long time, but I've never seriously committed myself to playing through the whole game. I kind of got burned out on it. So with your games as well, I'm going to play through Disco Elysium and 3 other games and make a video about it, okay? Sound good? All right, during the credits, I'm also going to show a long list of games that I've played that, you shouldn't recommend, right? Because obviously I have played those games. Oh, that guy hit me. I'm hoping that you find a way to surprise and delight me. Also, you should probably tell me the reason why you're recommending a game, like what surprised you about the game. That might be useful. All right. I will see you all next week. All right. Not with the video. I can't play 3 games in a week, but we'll get there. Okay, we'll get there. And so yeah, I'm just I guess I'm gonna just run around for a second while the credits play. I really like you guys. Thanks for recommending me these games ahead of time. I like it. I feel bad killing these scorpions. I don't know. They're scorpions. Do they really need to die? Who knows? The first time I can genuinely remember loving music in an intentional way was in 1996. I was 5, my mom rented the Beatles' Yellow Submarine from the library, and John, Paul, George, and Ringo wowed me. I watched that VHS at least twice a day for a week, and then we returned it to the library. Sure, it's essentially like non-stop music videos, but the songs like Yellow Submarine, Nowhere Man, and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds have played endlessly in my head ever since. I'm not the biggest Beatles fan, but I gotta admit, I love the band and have since that summer, even if I haven't seen the film since then. I can't say the same about most of the music I loved in childhood. Like many girls my age, I went through a boy band phase in the late 90s. My two most spun CDs at the turn of the millennium were NSYNC's No Strings Attached and the Backstreet Boys' appropriately titled album, Millennium. I also spent more time than necessary listening to my Pokemon the movie and Yu-Gi-Oh! The TV show soundtracks. Today, I view all that music as trash. I don't have nostalgia for Backstreet or NSYNC. They were just this weird thing I was into for a few years long ago. In middle school, which for me was the mid-2000s, I would say I got into music more intently for the first time. And as many an edgy preteen are wont to do, I listened to popular emo and nu metal acts like Linkin Park, My Chemical Romance, and Slipknot. The edgy nature of these artists with angry songs about death and asserting yourself spoke to something within me, even if I was always a mild-mannered kid. I don't listen to any of that stuff anymore. I tried to put on some Slipknot the other year, and I was confused as to how I ever liked it in the first place. I do like some metal bands now, so it's not like the genre puts me off, it's just how aggressive and adolescent that all seems, which burns me out, which, even before I finish a song, I'm just not that person who is into it anymore. This all feels natural to me. I think most people like certain music at certain points of their youth, use it as a kind of identifier for who they are, who they want to be, and then grow out of it. Listening to that music may prove a form of nostalgia if the memories carry some wistful energy, but they may also prove embarrassing or complicated if the person they reflect doesn't represent the person you became. You were still growing, still figuring out who you'd be. It's okay that you don't like My Chemical Romance, even if you'll always be someone who's listened to 3 Cheers for Sweet Revenge hundreds of times. I hesitate, as someone on the internet who has cultivated a public persona of being a nice girl, to be overly critical of some of this music. Some of you may like Slipknot, or God forbid, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Soundtrack, but I'm gonna come clean. I don't think the music I liked at that time was good. Nu metal has aged pretty poorly. Boy bands, while still in vogue, aren't the pinnacle of musical achievement, and they weren't even when the ones I liked were the biggest groups on the planet. My Chemical Romance, particularly the early stuff I enjoyed since I fell off their train when they went to the Black Parade, sounds like edgy teenager shit to me. As a 32-year-old woman with kids, I can see why that music wouldn't just strike me as distant from some past version of myself, but awkward and silly. This cat is awkward and silly. I feel like the music I loved in high school should be different. That's when I became an adult and started forming the tastes I now have. Some of it I still do love. I got into Kiki King around 2008, and she's probably tied for my favorite musical artist today. But I didn't listen to her that much in high school, and in fact, it wasn't until around 2018 or 19 when something clicked and her music became one of my favorites. Otherwise, she was just someone floating in the background of my musical subconscious. Other artists haven't fared so well, even though they are critical darlings who pretty much everyone seems to love. Case in point, and one reason I'm making this video, Radiohead, who you can see floating around me. When I was in high school, I went through a long phase where I tried to listen to all the best music that topped all the best of all time lists. Then and today, to a lesser extent, Radiohead topped those lists. It was 2008, In Rainbows had just come out. People generally agreed they had made multiple masterpieces. So I listened to them. Then I went and listened to all of their albums. I became a fan. I cried after a breakup while listening to High and Dry. I went on road trips where I played Hail to the Thief. I even liked The King of Limbs when it came out. It's over there. I'd say for a period of maybe 2 years, Kid A was my favorite album, and Radiohead formed a core part of my musical personality. Their focused songwriting and sonic ambitions formed the benchmark for how I thought about music for a long time. They were important to me in a way few bands have ever been. Today, though, I don't like Radiohead that much. I know the songs are rich tapestries of sound, but I can't separate the me who listened then and the me who listens now. When I hear Radiohead songs, I feel like the girl I was then, and I struggle to understand why I even liked them in the first place. It wasn't because their music was good, though sure it was. Rather because someone told me it was good, and I wanted to listen to the best music. My tastes were so shallow at that time. I was a bit of a robot with pitchfork and message board opinions trickled down to me. I hated some acclaimed music, but so much of what I liked was based on the opinions of others. Not in the good way in which one builds taste, but in the self-conscious way, where you like what you like because of at least a little bit what it says about you. This all makes sense. I hadn't heard enough music to form my own opinions yet, and now to some extent I have. Still, I don't want to be transported back into the mindset of a young woman too insecure to like what she likes because she likes it, and as a result I can't listen to Radiohead on its own merits. I've got too much intellectual resentment about their music built up. I liked them a lot, but Radiohead was not my favorite music in high school. That was Elliott Smith. I had trauma dumped all these emotional feelings on a friend, and as part of their response, and I regret that now, but as part of their response, they recommended Elliott Smith to me. The recommendation proved quite potent. His tunes spoke profoundly to my depression, anxiety, and life experiences. By the beginning of my sophomore year, Elliott Smith was my favorite musical artist, and so much of what I felt about myself and others was filtered through his perspective on the world. When I felt depressed, it was his depression. When I felt like ending my life, it was filtered through his feelings on the topic. When I felt hurt from some lover's spat, it was his vindictiveness that flowed through me. In a sense, I traded in My Chemical Romance's more juvenile teenage melodrama for a slightly more mature version of the same thing. I've never stopped liking Elliott Smith, but the way I feel about his music has shifted dramatically over the years. I don't trust the me who felt those feelings when she listened to that music. Elliott Smith died before I got into his tunes, so I've got no new songs to appreciate and change my mind about, like some of my favorite Kiki King records, which came out after my initial foray into her music, which might give me a new lease on understanding Smith's work. Elliott Smith has remained a pretty static figure for most of my life, an unchanging discography I navigate differently every time I return to it. Lately, my favorite of his albums has been New Moon, a compilation of tracks released after his death. New Moon existed when I was in high school, but it was probably my least favorite Elliott Smith album. I think I love it now because I didn't listen to it much then, which allows me to experience his music anew, not as a thrifted emotion from a younger version of myself. I don't know about you, but at some point, secondhand emotions become tiresome. I don't want to be nostalgic when I listen to music. I don't want to be the person who continues to experience and rely on those feelings I once had. I want to grow out of them, become someone else, someone more than I was. I'm 32. I was 16 years old 16 years ago. I've had 16 years of new experiences, and while Elliott Smith, Radiohead, and NSYNC are always going to be touchstones of my experience of this world, would I like to be the me who never grew out of them? In 10 years, will I feel the same way about Grouper and Kiki King and the Cocteau Twins? Part of me hopes not, because I like the me of now. But I probably liked the me of now in 2010 and 2005 and in 1996, even if I don't like the me of then, now. So sure, is it possible to like the music you loved in high school? Yeah, I guess. Do I want to be someone stuck connecting to the same music I listened to 20 years ago, experiencing the same emotions I did then and never going anywhere new? No. While it's tempting to say I'd like to wipe my memories of Elliott Smith so I can experience either or for the first time, I'm glad I have the baggage that comes with experience. I don't want to forget why Fond Farewell or Somebody I Used to Know made me cry at points in my life. But the fact that I cried means that story, those feelings, will always be lurking in the background when I hear those songs. Slowly, surely, distance from those emotions might give me space to associate these songs with new feelings, But I'm not there, and I'm not counting on it. Instead, my new favorite album will just have to change with me. And that's okay. I'll catch you next week. And hey, listen to one of these records for me, will ya?
I'm the primary cook for my family of 4. Because my work schedule is far more flexible than my wife's, I meal plan, grocery shop, and most nights cook a meal for my family, ready when they get home from work and school. Cooking is one of my great joys in life. It makes me feel competent, allows me to show people how much I love them, and is an opportunity to be a little creative. I'm also a vegetarian. I've only been one for about a year, meaning I had to completely revamp our family cookbook. Prior to me coming out as someone who doesn't eat, meat, we had beef, chicken, and pork at nearly every meal. Our tastes included chicken fajitas, pork roast, braised beef noodle soup, kung pao chicken, and of course, steak and potatoes, classic Midwestern diet. While some of these old meals could be adapted with alternative ingredients, many couldn't, meaning my abdication of a meat-eating lifestyle made cooking a bit more complicated. I'm particularly self-conscious because I don't want my family eating worse meals because of my dietary limitations. So I do my best to cook dishes that are as good or better than what we had before. Curry has been a saving grace in that quest. Everybody loves curry with its fantastic flavors, and Indian food lends itself particularly well to a vegetarian and even vegan lifestyle because, curry is usually vegetarian in the first place. So I don't have to jump through hoops like I might to get Swedish meatless balls, fake pork and pepper stir fry, or soy tacos. I've cooked chana masala, aloo gobi, bainan bharta, Thai red curry, shahi paneer, dal makhani, and probably more that I don't remember off the top of my head. With each, I furnished my family's plates with rice and naan while they devour these curries with their lovely if ferocious evening hunger. Today, I'd like to walk you through how I cook 2 different curries, which come from 2 different points in my life. Rainbow Plant Life's chickpea curry and my mom's vindaloo. Sure, I'll go through the steps of how to cook these meals a little bit, but this video is not a recipe guide. If you want one, go watch a real chef explain how they cook their curry. Instead, this is a space for me to reflect on my history with food and cooking and why these recipes matter to me. One of my favorite YouTubers to learn cooking ideas from is Nisha Vor, aka Rainbow Plant Life. She's a vegan channel. I've made a variety of the recipes from her website and I've never been left disappointed. But the real cloud pleaser is her chickpea curry, which is in essence a variation on chana masala. To give you an idea of how good it is, I recently cooked this meal for my mother and father-in-law, and my mother-in-law took the recipe and learned how to cook it herself, which to me is pretty high praise. The praise isn't for me, of course, it's for Nisha's ability to create stunning recipes and communicate them to an audience. But suffice to say, this curry tastes great. The dish works for a few reasons, all of which follow standard kitchen principles: fresh ingredients, tasty spices, and thoughtful cooking process. I've got onion, tomatoes, garlic, spinach, ginger, serrano, cilantro, and lime all brought from the store fresh earlier in the week. Accompanying these plants are a variety of spices which create the dish's potent flavors. Adding these flavors to the cooked onion with some tomato paste early on gives them time to really build over the course of the cooking process. The recipe does have quite a few steps. Here they are. You toast some cumin and coriander seeds. Add the onion for 5 minutes. Then add the garlic, serrano, and ginger for a couple. Then toss in ground spices and tomato paste. Let that sit for a few. Then add in salt and tomatoes and cook for 5 minutes. Then add chickpeas, coconut milk, water, and tahini. Cook that for 15 to 20 minutes. Add spinach. Cook that for 5. Top it off with cilantro, lime, and garam masala. Serve it hot. Once you've done it a few times, the recipe does feel pretty natural. It follows pretty standard curry cooking ideas, and I was able to just rattle off the steps from memory when I wrote the script. If you're interested in cooking this, don't let the steps discourage you. I just prep most of my ingredients before I start cooking so I can focus on the next step rather than prepping ingredients. It'll take you more time to cook the recipe, but you'll feel on top of things and cooking should feel enjoyable. I like to take my time when cooking. I think it's a good idea. I tell you about this recipe in part maybe because you'll cook it, and it's good, you should cook it, but mostly because it represents what good cooking looks like. When I was in college, I worked in the kitchen of one of the most expensive restaurants in my city. I wasn't a chef though, I was the dishwasher. Part of the dishwasher's responsibilities was to prep ingredients for soups and other dishes. When I first started there, I knew how to do the dishes, but I barely cooked anything besides like frozen pizza. The sous chef liked me and taught me how to hold a knife, cut an onion, and all sorts of little kitchen skills I've carried with me for the rest of my life. But most importantly, he gave me a new mindset. Whereas for much of my childhood, cooking was this out-of-reach task that no one would bother to give me any insight into, this chef showed me that ingredients could be transformed into amazing dishes with a little bit of effort, and thus gave me a ticket to start doing my own such transformations. It took me a long time to really start putting those skills into practice, in part because my wife did almost all the cooking. I don't begrudge her for it. My wife is an amazing chef, but as she's worked longer hours in recent years, someone had to pick up the slack, and that was me. Sadly, I think transitioning helped me too. I grew up in a context where women cooked and men didn't. And in fact, men cooking outside of maybe grilling was viewed as humorous, a disaster waiting to happen. So, for much of my life, I harbored a kind of sexist belief, which impeded my own confidence in the kitchen. Coming out as a woman liberated me from those hand-tying emotions and allowed me to more easily embrace parts of myself I felt were off limits. I think many trans people have similar experiences with parts of their personality only allowed to flourish once they figure out who they actually are, even if those things aren't necessarily tied down because of their assigned gender at birth. Today, I am confident in my ability to cook meals, and this curry represents that. I try new recipes every week, and while they aren't all successful, enough are that I know if I want to make something and put in the time and effort, I can make anything I set my mind to. I'm still building up culinary intuition, and I'll never be in Chopped unless they have an episode dedicated to slow and methodical family cooks, but I love cooking, and it's something I want to do for the people I love for the rest of my life. And I suspect that this chickpea curry will still be in the rotation when I've got grandkids. The whole story, though, isn't just that a woman learned how to cook in her late 20s and early 30s. I grew up in a much different context. We barely had home-cooked meals at all. When I think back on the dinners of my childhood, I remember frozen fish sticks and fries, frozen pizzas, McDonald's, pre-made hot dogs, potato chips. Sometimes we'd break out some raw meat for spaghetti or buffalo wings, but in both of those instances, it was mostly just throwing together ingredients in a pot. Of the home-cooked meals, which required a knife in their preparation, I mostly remember my mom's vindaloo. Compared to Rainbow Plant Life's chickpea curry, my mom's vindaloo is exceedingly simple. Gone are the fresh ingredients. Here are an onion, chicken, and potatoes. No green plants in sight. Gone are the litany of spices. Instead, we just use a jar of Madras curry paste. Gone are the many steps. Fry some chicken, take it out of the pot. Cook some onions, then throw in the paste, potatoes, chicken, water, and maybe some ginger if you're feeling fancy, and wait 30 minutes and serve over rice. We didn't even have naan. If Rainbow Plant Life's chickpea curry represents good culinary instincts, my mom's vindaloo represents the absence of them. It's simple, and all the flavor comes from a jar. You may think I'm throwing my mom under the bus here, complaining about the food a woman who gave 18 crucial years of her life to made me, but I'm not. Yes, it's pedestrian. Yes, I don't cook it for anyone else. Yes, it's incredibly one note, but I love it. On a personal level, I enjoy it more than Rainbow Plant Life's chickpea curry because it was the first curry I ever had. I get such satisfaction from the fact that I can make my mom's curry, carry on a family culinary tradition, even if now as a vegetarian I skip the chicken and just throw in extra potatoes. It's definitely nostalgia, definitely the critic from Ratatouille sticking something reminiscent of a memory into his mouth, but in the end, what matters is my enjoyment of the food I cook, and I enjoy this dish. Maybe it's just a familiar flavor. Maybe it's the love of my mother, a teenage mom who didn't have the time I got to figure out who I was and gained proper adulting skills before I had kids, reaching across time. Maybe the jar of curry paste is really just that good. I don't know. But I do know that I eat my fill and enjoy my food and pack the rest in the fridge to eat for a few more lunches over the week. Ultimately, what my mom's vindaloo teaches me is more important than the best chickpea curry. It's that I cook so that the people I love will be fed. I don't cook to make the best food, though I sure try to make the best food I can. I don't cook to prove my worth, though I do get a sense of satisfaction from preparing meals. No, in the end, I cook so people can eat. And when I cook my mom's vindaloo, I'm reminded of all the people before me who fed me enough so that I might get to the point that I could feed others. I kind of just realized the script kind of just ends there, which is, I feel like it's a pretty good conclusion, but I guess I'll leave you with this note. You should cook. Cooking is really enjoyable, and I think it's a skill that everyone should have. So my challenge to you is, this week will only be available for 1 week. In that week, try to cook something, and try to get someone else besides you, hopefully, to eat it. All right? Have a great week. I'm Evelynn. I'll see you next Monday.
The sophomore slump is one of the most common tropes when discussing the careers of musical artists. It's a pretty simple concept. After a successful debut album, the musician's next outing is often disappointing. The reasons for that disappointment varies, and the idea is generally overstated, but it makes sense why a slump might happen. A debut represents the emergence of a new artist with new perspectives and ideas. Their songs have a sound unique to them because they're from an individual. Those beautiful songs probably percolated in the creator's mind for many years before they found an audience. The next project, though, has less time to develop, and the creator is stuck in a perpetual artistic limbo. Their next album has to be like their previous one, but not too much like it. The difficulty in finding that balance is the catalyst for many a sophomore slump, and is a useful framework to start considering the relationship between works in an artist's discography. This video isn't about sophomore slumps, it's about finding your artistic style. But the sophomore slump phenomenon offers a unique insight into the artistic process. All art an artist produces communicates with the rest of that artist's body of work. We can't write the same song or make the same video twice. We must continue to make something new with what's available to us. Our artistic style is the culmination of all the unique works of art we make and the through lines that bind them together, despite each of their pleas that they are indeed different than what came before and what will come after. Every artist who creates more than one work has a style, one which can get more layered and nuanced with each addition to their au revoir. Most people, though, struggle to identify their artistic style and spend more time worrying about it than they should. It can be a paralyzing force for many would-be artists, inhibiting their ability to make anything at all. Today, I want to walk you through what it's like to find your style, why it's not as big of a deal as we often make it out to be, and how you can start working on one today. Now, I've already defined artistic style in one way, the commonalities of your work, but I'd like to give you a second way to think about it. Style is the emergence of you through an artistic medium. You are unique and irreplaceable. Anything you create is, definitionally, one of a kind, by consequence of your individuality. Yet, ironically, most of us start our artistic careers and hobbies seeking to emulate the styles of others. It's no sin to do this. I learned to play guitar first from learning other people's songs. Other people's YouTube videos inspired me to make my own. We don't make art in a vacuum, but at some point we've got to go beyond emulation and embrace synthesis, finding something between that which inspires us and the us who is doing the making. My most practical advice on this matter is that it takes time to get there. It requires consistent and thoughtful artistic expression, so you shouldn't beat yourself up if you don't have your own unique style right away. If you're watching this video, then you're probably a fan of the I Am Error YouTube channel. You like the style I bring to the table, but I didn't always have this style. And even more, this style wasn't always meant to be. I started my channel in late 2020. I'd wanted to make YouTube videos for quite a few years, and being stuck at home during the pandemic was the right context for me to finally activate on that desire. Like many people on the platform, I was inspired by other YouTube videos to start making my own. Unlike many people though, I know exactly the day and video that got me there. Tim Rogers' Action Button Reviews Doom on the morning of September 22nd, 2020. I woke up at 3 a.m., couldn't sleep, got recommended the video, watched half of it, went and got breakfast at McDonald's, and while in the drive-thru, I decided I had to make videos too. Then I went home and finished the review. I told a friend at 8:22 a.m. that this is exactly what I've been wanting to make. You can see what inspired me in the works that followed. I've made multi-hour video game reviews sitting in front of a green screen, for goodness sake. So he definitely influenced the style of my channel. Yet, for the first year of my videos, I didn't rush to make the next Action Button Reviews video because I didn't believe I was capable of it. While my multiple degrees in literature and film and my then in progress PhD meant I had a lot of experience writing, I had barely ever edited a video before. So I set out to change that. I made a video every week for half a year, and it all culminated in a video on Sokoban and Baba Is You. Each week, my style developed further. I learned new skills I could apply to my work, found what works for me and what doesn't. For instance, those early days of the channel were deeply invested in evaluating capital GD game design. That made sense when we consider that 40 minutes of Action Button's Doom review is spent reviewing the first level of the game. I took my own hand at such discussions. I made a video discussing Ocarina of Time's Deku Tree level, another on Tetris's game design, another on F-Zero's speed, and another on why Pokemon Snap is really an adventure game. These diversions sucked, and those videos are boring. I don't have much of a talent for discussing game design straight up while continuing to make the video itself interesting. So over time, such conversations went on the back burner of the channel. The last time capital GD game design was the center of a video I made was the truly mediocre It's Fun to Be Punched in the Mouth, which is not good and is only available publicly on my channel right now because a fan bugged me about it a few months ago. I remove videos all the time, sorry. At the same time though, I also experimented with discussing games from an emotional angle. One discussed why Microsoft Flight Simulator stirred such powerful feelings of home within me. Another is about why Grist made me reflect on my own mental illness. Those videos, though, were too on the nose. They were all emotion, start to finish, so the lack of contrast makes them overwhelming and, frankly, annoying to sit through. While emotional work continued to find its way into my videos, as expressing vulnerable personal experiences is one of the hallmarks of my style, those early versions didn't yet know how to do it. I was fumbling around in the dark trying to find myself. I made many videos at that time, and while none of it was particularly interesting or good, all of them represent steps I took to develop my own style, my own way of making YouTube videos. You can see a year into the channel when I finally tried my hand at making a long-form review like my primordial inspiration, it came out way different than Action Button. Here I was dressing in costume and comparing Resident Evil Village to vampire novels from the 1700s and monster movies from the 1930s. I argued that the game is all about the fear of being a parent. How odd. While that video has never gotten views, makes me feel dysphoric, and I find my full-throated attempt at a spooky accent awful, I am incredibly proud that I made something uniquely mine, uniquely me. It's a video only I could make, and I've never seen anyone discuss Resident Evil Village like I did, not even remotely. The rest of Season 1 continued that trend. My multi-hour reviews with claims like Advanced Wars is an anti-war war game and Luigi is player 2 personified are wholly my own, something only I would say. Do I believe those videos are good? No, not really, though. I know people hate it when I say that. Am I recommending that you go watch them? Is that what this video is about? Also, no, not really. You don't have to go watch those videos. Nah, all I'm trying to say here is that over time, through lots of trial and error, I found my own footing. And my styles continued to evolve since then. Each video continues to be uniquely mine. I don't know, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I Am Error is a kind of weird blend of sincerity, vulnerability, media analysis, personal reflection, improvisation, and experimentation that you can't exactly find anywhere else. And connecting every video I make is a clear thesis. We're all changing all the time. Nearly every video for 2 or 3 years that I've made ultimately discusses the big concept of change from another angle. Most potently in Elaborate Reviews Season 2, in which I compared how I felt about the best game I ever played at ages 5, 10, 15, and 20 with how I feel about them now as an 82-year-old grandma. Ultimately, we should really leave it to others to describe our style for us, because how you interpret my work is more important than how I interpret it. But I hope this talk through the evolution of my own channel gets you thinking about style and where it comes from, effort, and time. Style is the emergence of you, but unfortunately you are not fully formed and you will never be. Your first work isn't you, it's just putting your first attempt at putting you out there. Next time you will be more you. The 1000th time will be even better than that. But if you don't try, if you don't put yourself out there, give yourself a chance to reflect on your previous work and build off it, make something that's different but the same, then you'll never go anywhere. So often I see artists or would-be artists stuck in the mindset that they have to make something perfect on their first try, as if their first album must be a masterpiece, their first video perfect. Don't think like that. I've many times heard the advice that what you make at first sucks, and you just have to keep working on it. And while I'm certainly echoing that kind of sentiment here, that's not this story. What you make at first doesn't suck. If it did, then it wouldn't be something to build off of. No, what you make first is just your first stab at finding your style, finding yourself, a process which is full of dead ends, runarounds, wrong turns, and on occasion, beautiful destinations. I've seriously enjoyed finding my style over the past 4 years of I Am Error, and I know in another year my style will be different than it is now. Ironically, I think 2024 Evelynn's style is worse than 2023 Evelynn's style. My Ocarina and Shadow of the Colossus videos are high watermarks I don't think I can ever replicate. But as is the spirit of my channel, I've got to keep changing. I can't make the Ocarina video again, and if I try, I will fail because that video is only good because it's authentically and sincerely the me of then. I am not her anymore. You will not be the you of now tomorrow, but you'll carry something of that person with you. Making art is an attempt to make concrete a moment of ourselves, and our style as it evolves is the collage of those moments connected in hindsight. Style is always a past tense project, so don't waste your time imagining the styles you could have, or worse, that you'd like to copy. The further you're fixed in the future tense, the further you'll be from making genuine art that develops your style for that future you. Be inspired by what's in front of you and make something that reflects the you of now, who will soon be the you of then. But they'll be the you of then who reflects the new you of now beautifully. Gosh, that's a really wordy conclusion. You'll probably need to watch that one again, huh? I'll see you next week. Like many people, I loved Eminem's song Lose Yourself back in the early 2000s. I mean, it's a pretty iconic song after all. It's also an easy one to understand, I suppose. It's about seizing the moment and to make your dreams come true. In the first verse, Eminem describes B Rabbit, someone who is him and not him, and is not ready to capture what they want. They're so nervous, stuck in their own head, and covered in spaghetti that they fail to do what they set out to do. But even though they're on the ropes, they're going to go back to the lab and try again. The The second verse describes this character's normal life difficulties to emphasize how important success is to the character and what he's given up for a chance to succeed. Finally, in the third verse, Eminem speaks honestly about himself, what he wants, the obstacles to getting there, and letting go of it all to try to succeed. You might not remember these verses, but you probably know the chorus, where Eminem implores the listener to lose themselves in the moment so they don't miss out on all they ever wanted. I haven't actually been thinking much about Eminem's hit song with 1 billion views on YouTube the past couple days, but I have been thinking about the concept of losing yourself. In the context of the song, lose yourself means drop your inhibitions and throw yourself into success. But in some senses, it's a poignant reflection on change. In order to become someone else, you must lose yourself, or at least the yourself of right now. We can reflect on what someone must give up to be successful, as is in the case of the song, but also all the little decisions we might make day to day, where we are constantly accosted with the decision to keep ourselves, maintain the status quo, or lose ourselves and become someone else. These feelings have been brought to the forefront because I recently had to make a major life decision, maybe the biggest I've ever had to make. For those of you who don't know, my wife and I are foster parents. We currently have one adopted child and one foster baby. Last week we received a call. Our baby's caseworker told us they found a family member to take the baby in, and she subsequently asked us if we'd consider taking care of a sibling group of 3, ages 2, 3, and 5. It was a huge ask, especially because we weren't currently open to a new placement. We had the weekend to decide if our family would add 3 new members, and I felt like every day, every hour, my mind flipped back and forth between yes and no. After reflection, I realized the essential question at the heart of my internal conflict. Was I willing to lose myself for this? It's a pretty dramatic question, but it really got to the heart of why it was difficult for me to make a choice. On one hand, I want to be a kind, generous, and loving person, like my grandma, someone who doesn't hesitate to give up of themselves for others. On the other hand, I love my life with my smaller family. I love the time I have to make YouTube videos outside my job. I love making music, playing video games, watching movies, streaming for you all, cooking fancy meals. And while some of that stuff might and will survive the transition from a family of 4 to 7, I knew the truth was that not all of it could survive, or at least those hobbies and habits would have to look different. When we think of our identities, we often distill them into labels. Your profession, hobbies, relationship status, political affiliation, race, gender, etc. And of course, if you know my channel at all, you know I'd never say these labels aren't important to a person's identity. But I think that labels are not that useful for figuring out who a person really is. We want to believe people who share our label are like us. They're good, decent folk with similar tastes, ideas, and morals. But really, people who share our labels are just people who share our labels. Identity is not some set of nouns or adjectives we subscribe to. Our identity is how we spend our time, aka the verbs we do. You are as much a filmmaker as the amount of time you spend making and thinking about making films. As much a video gamer as the amount of time you spend playing video games. As much a parent as you spend time parenting. You learn way more about a person from how they spend their time than a list of labels that might describe them. Knowing this puts the concept of losing myself into focus. How could I not lose myself, or at least the myself of yesterweek, with 3 more kids? I couldn't. Even so, I decided I'd rather lose myself to become someone new and hopefully better than maintain my status quo. We told the caseworker if they couldn't find someone to take in all 3 siblings,
we'd take care of them rather than have them split up by the foster care system. That came to pass, and they've been living with us for the past week, and might live with us forever, who knows. I'm not gonna lie, the last week has been hard. Everyone from each kid to each parent is adjusting to a new environment. Yet it's also been incredibly joyous. I love spending time with these kids, even if it's pretty much all I do from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. every day. None of the siblings are currently in daycare school, so I've spent every day with them, going to the park, playing with toys, and importantly, teaching them to breathe, to take a moment and figure out how they feel when emotion grips them. We got a lot of work to do, but after all, if I wasn't able to do that, I wouldn't have been able to say yes to what might be the wildest decision of my entire life. I hope I can prepare these children for a lifetime of losing themselves, because in some respects, that's all we ever do. Moving forward, I'm going to try to finish the summer of weekly videos. Emphasis on the word try. I technically only have 2 more to go, so that feels manageable. After that, I Am Error might look different. Or it might not, I don't know. Patrons and longtime fans, please be patient with me and understand that while my labels are the same as a month ago, mother, wife, teacher, doctor, YouTuber, etc., the ways I spend my time have had to shift dramatically, and as such, so has my identity. So I'll see you next week when you and I will certainly have lost ourselves again.
Hi there, and my kids are finally asleep. It's 1:52 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and I gotta get a video out in 2 days. And so I wanted to make the follow-up video to the one where I asked you all to give me your video game recommendations on games that surprised or delighted you. I managed to play 5 games, and what I wanted to do for this video is I'm going to watch myself playing the games, and I'm going to talk through those games. I'm going to answer a couple questions. I'm going to describe what the game is. I'm going to tell you about what I liked about the game, and I'm going to try to answer the question if it surprised me and why. And so our first game here is called Sayonara Wild Hearts. Now, this was suggested by a lot of users. Satters8013, Tesseract King, FireOp8, Sleepin' Bell 9627, and Lucas Sigario, or Luca Sigario maybe, 5705. So thank you guys for recommending this game. I got a lot of recommendations, like 100 plus games, so I wasn't able to play all of them. I played 5, but this one looked pretty good, and you're seeing some gameplay of it right now. So, description of Sayonara Wild Hearts. It's kind of like I wrote down here action rhythm game, and I think that that's fair. It is very rhythm focused. You can't really tell right now because the music isn't playing, but it's incredibly stylish. It's this game where you're constantly, hitting buttons to the beat. I did okay on that part right there, but then there's also sometimes these like more actiony segments where you're like riding a motorcycle, still based on the rhythm of the music that you are listening to. I love how stylish it is. This like beautiful neon color palette is pretty awesome. I was having trouble here in this part, it looks like. The game is really, so it's really fun. The gameplay is really like kinetic, and it just moves forward at a really breakneck pace. You're never bored while playing this game because there's always something to do, which is something I've always liked about rhythm games. I think rhythm games, they carry on that spirit of Tetris where like the player must always be acting, always be doing. There's never a moment of kind of downtime, and I really like that about Sayonara Wild Hearts and rhythm games in general. If you guys will recall, if you watched my live stream where I reviewed or rated the top 100 games, I made the top 100 games of all time list. I specifically put Dance Dance Revolution, I think, in the top 10. I think that is, like, rhythm games are truly special, and this is one of them, so I really like that about it. But it's also really stylish, as you can see here. It's got this tarot card theme. Everything looks and feels just fantastic when you're playing Sayonara Wild Hearts. And finally, like I already intimated, the action is always moving forward in this game. It's just like go. It's like an hour-long game. You have fun the whole hour. So I liked it quite a lot. Now, the real question though is, did it surprise me? And the answer was yes. I think it did surprise me. I was really happy you guys recommended this game because of it. The way that the game really surprised me is that it is a rhythm game, but most rhythm games kind of like they give you some basic sets of tools and then they reiterate on those tools over and over and over again, right? So like Beat Saber, the fun of Beat Saber supposedly is, or Dance Dance Revolution, is that each new song represents a new sequence of moves that you must memorize. Now, what makes Sayonara Wild Hearts different than other rhythm games is that it never really repeats the same thing. Like each level is a different kind of rhythm game. So like here, we're, in the last game we were on like this motorcycle and we were on a 2D plane, and now we're like flying through space on this kind of like nice car. And if we skip ahead a little bit, we see now we're on a motorcycle still, but now we're like on a platforming section. I messed up that mushroom platform segment a lot. Well, watch me mess up. I couldn't figure this out very well. It looks like maybe here's where I figured it out. Yeah, all right, great, good for me. But right now we suddenly have this platform rhythm game that's kind of happening, and I really did enjoy playing through the game. Like, right in here I'm like collecting mushrooms and getting bigger. It's just like the game has this real sense of fun and exuberance for changing it up. And that surprised me many times across the game's runtime. It was really delightful. Every single song, something new was happening. I had to learn and think on my feet. I wasn't just Beat Sabering the same ways I've always done, just to a new song. I write down here in my notes here, I wrote that I felt like a kid eating a different flavor of candy every course, like 12 courses of meals. And I was surprised by how seamlessly the game pulls it off. It does feel like really like a 12-course meal of a rhythm game. And each plate in that each course, fantastic. Thanks for the recommendation, guys. So the next game that you guys recommended to me, this was recommended by Chariot Rider, who is a friend of the channel. He's a pal of mine. But Chariot Rider, he makes videos on YouTube. You should watch them as well. He recommended this game, which is called Arctic Eggs. Now, Arctic Eggs, since I made the surprise video, has, I think, been having its moment in the sun. I think a lot of people have been thinking about this game and enjoying it and making videos on it. I think that if I recall, Heavy Eyed has made a video about this, and so has, what's his name? Aaron Signal, right? I think Aaron Signal made a video about this too. So, but what is Arctic Eggs? Arctic Eggs is an absurd existential cooking game. In essence, you're this guy who is a fry cook, the lowly egg cooker. And it looks like I took a break here. Let's skip ahead. Let's skip ahead to some cooking stuff. So here's some cooking. So it's this cooking game where you just have a frying pan and you're trying to usually fry eggs. Here I was frying something else. But sometimes there's other things like cigarettes or meat cubes or other stuff in here. Here's me trying to cook bacon and trying to flip the pan and me failing. It looks like, yeah. And the game is really forgiving. It's hard, I think, in the sense that like flipping the eggs is not easy. You don't have like a spatula to flip them. You have to flip them in the pan and flip anything in the pan over and over and over again. And sometimes the controls are too like sensitive, so that can be tricky. But because it's a pretty fast-paced game, the game doesn't punish you too much for failing at any given point. So, but in essence, it's this cooking game where you cook eggs and bacon and other stuff. And then it is also kind of this existential kind of look on life. There's a lot of different kind of perspectives kind of being floated in here, different philosophical thoughts, but it's also really absurd and comedic most of the time. And so, you're sitting here trying to flip your eggs, trying to do your stuff, and it's not easy, but you get by and you enjoy the dialogue as it happens. What I liked about the game, it is incredibly fun. I think that the flipping mechanic is really genius. It's really genius. Here I am trying to flip one last piece of bacon and I flip the egg off, right? Like the game has this really joyous energy to it. It never gets old. Maybe that's because the game isn't too long. This is like a 10-hour game. I'm sure I would get bored of it, but it's like a 1-hour game. Oh, and there I go, flipping it off again, right? It's funny. It's funny. You can just laugh at yourself. It's one of those kind of games. Underneath that goofy exterior lies a thoughtful game. The dialogue is always kind of got this philosophical pining to it. It's a game which is trying to think as much as it is trying to get you to play. And I like that about it. And again, just like Sayonara Wild Hearts, I feel like the game always moves forward. You never cook the same thing twice. There aren't, a lot of cooking games, they'll have like these like timed challenges or like, like an Overcooked or something like that. You're cooking the same things, but now you just have more of them or something like that. I feel like Arctic Eggs does a really good job of, and there I go again. Arctic Eggs does a really good job of just making you do something, giving you the novelty of cooking bacon and two pieces of bacon and an egg, and then say, okay, done with that challenge. Let's move on to something else, So we click further into the runtime, and now we get 2 pufferfish and an egg, right? It's never the same thing. You're always encountering new challenges, which allows you to really relish in the joy. So I like the game quite a bit. But did it surprise me? And the answer was yes. I think the cooking mechanics in this game are so different than other cooking games that I've played. Most other cooking games that you'll play in your life, they kind of tend to simplify the cooking mechanics, and in turn, it's more about management. I would say most cooking games are actually management games. They're not actually about you cooking. They're about, like, Overcooked is really a game about managing a kitchen, and I think like a lot of cooking games kind of balance that kind of thing. I know I'm comparing it to Overcooked quite a bit, but there's a lot of cooking games. But this made me, this game is really surprising in that it really focuses on the literal act of flipping eggs in a pan, and how that act by itself can be joyous and be a game in and of itself. And I think that is quite fun about it. It actually made me really start thinking about writing an academic book on cooking games. I think that might be a fun academic exercise. I did some preliminary research into the topic actually, and there aren't that many academic scholars who have tackled cooking games, like, especially not as a monolith before. And Arctic Eggs could easily be a chapter in that kind of game, because I think that it's so unique and weird and interesting. Here I am cooking, it looks like a fish that's going to be fighting against its will, a live fish, but I got a cigarette in there too, right? It makes it taste better or something. So I love Arctic Eggs. It does have, like, lol random humor a little bit, but it's also got some thoughtful ideas that it explores throughout its enjoyable cooking time. And I'd recommend you play it too. All right, the next game that was suggested to me was Iron Lung, which you're watching right now. Not the most beautiful game to watch silently. This was recommended to me by none other than Rasputin, who is he has got a big YouTube channel. You probably, if you watch me and you watch video essays, you probably have heard of Rasputin. I think his most popular series is like Gaming with My Girlfriend series. It's like where he like gets his now wife to like play a game and hear her thoughts. Like, I think it's Gaming for a Non-Gamer. That's what it's called. Sorry, my brain is fried. Like I said, 5 kids are upstairs sleeping. My brain is fried. You're lucky I'm making this video at all. But Rasputin recommended this in the comments, was the most upvoted of all the comments, and I was interested to play it. It was a game, like, one of the things that made games easier to select for this whole surprise game challenge was that they were short. And I knew Iron Lung was a game that probably would take me like an hour to beat. Arctic Eggs, another hour-long game. Cyanide Wild Hearts, again, another wild 1 hour game. So what is Iron Lung? It's kind of like a survival horror submarine game where you're managing this map that you're seeing on the screen, and you're moving yourself around, but you can't see anything. You can take like a static picture with your camera, but otherwise, and that's your goal. Your goal is to go to various landmarks and to take pictures of various things, in this deep underwater ocean of blood. It's a lot of set dressing for a pretty simple game where the gameplay is just simple. That is, rather, you're just you're in the submarine, and all you can do is kind of move those little toggles around you, and you're trying to follow your map and read your map well so that you can avoid any walls and not hit anything while moving across this deep ocean that you found yourself in. But of course, it's a horror game, so despite this relatively simple map perusing premise, is all these spooky sounds and underwater activity, and it's got this kind of like deep sea horror vibe, but it's even worse because you're in like this ocean of like blood, right? And so it's just it's a pretty intense kind of experience. And
I liked it. So what did I like? I like how simple it is. I think one of the things is like I don't like it when horror games have complex controls, because with a horror game you want to focus on the horror, right? You want to focus on the experience of being a little scared, of being thrilled, right? That is what a horror game is all about. And I think that some horror games, not a ton, but some horror games have, they're overly complex, and you don't need to be complex to make a good horror game. You just need a simple premise and a good vibe. And this game, I think, accomplishes those two things. I liked the constant switching back from the map to this control panel, while also trying to do things kind of quickly. I try to get in the right mindset of like, I have limited time on this submarine, and I just got to get going really fast, even though I think the game's actual timer is pretty loosey-goosey. I think that the spooky sounds you hear and everything, and then the final moment in the game, which I won't spoil here today, was all great. So did it surprise me? And the answer was, again, yes. You guys are 3 for 3 so far. You've really surprised me with the games that you picked. It helps that, of course, I was weeding through your answers and trying to pick games that looked unique or surprising to me, not just, trying to pick the most liked things, right? But the things that I felt were really new to me. It does the classic, I think, Jaws thing, right? I mean, and those of you who don't know, the movie Jaws by Steven Spielberg, I think, is one of the most successful films of all time. It was the highest grossing movie ever when it released, until it was usurped by Star Wars a couple years later. But one of the things Jaws is always known for doing well is that it doesn't show you the shark. You see from the perspective of the shark a few times, but until I think the third act, we just don't see the shark much at all. Now, there's a lot of talk about how Spielberg wanted to show the shark more, but there was a lot of difficulty in shooting, so they had to cut it out and then end up making the film better. Whatever, I don't care about that right now. Letting the audience use their imagination to make their own fear tends to work better for horror games than showing them the scary stuff, all right? If you look at most great horror movies, it is the anticipation to the fear that creates the enjoyment, not the disgusting payoff at the end. Now, I think a lot of horror games kind of miss that. Either they've got too complex of premises, or they're showing you the metaphorical shark too often, and that dulls the thrill of kind of wandering through the game. I think Iron Lung balances that really, really well. I think that taking pictures like I'm doing right here is really fun. It creates this sense of tension, and the game really has this nice momentum that kind of carries you to the end. When I hit the ending, which again I'm not going to spoil, I sat on stream laughing for minutes on end. It was a really fun, joyous, I was scared, I was thrilled, I loved it. It was a really good experience. I think if you got a Friday night, it's dark, you just want to sit down for an hour and play a video game, I would highly recommend Iron Lung. Halloween's coming up, right? It's near, we're in the middle of August. It's soon going to be October. Play this for, if you're going to play some horror games in October and you haven't already. This is a really, really fun game. And, soon Markiplier is going to be in a movie about it. So, go Markiplier. Way to go, buddy. Up next, I played the video game Signos, which was suggested by Lem860, but has been suggested numerous times by people on my Discord over the years. Here's me trying to figure out a key card thing, and here's me walking around. We'll stick with this gameplay here. So, quick description. I think it's a pretty basic kind of Resident Evil-esque survival horror game with you're managing some menus and you're trying to figure out some mysteries and you're trying to unlock doors. That seems to be most of the game. There's some action segments here. There seems to be some amnesia stuff there, whatever. Amnesia stuff. Big surprise, right? It's not even going to be, we were 4 out of 5 games in, but the next game's going to deal with amnesia too. And I don't really care for amnesia subplots, even though I am now somebody who was literally a year ago knocked out by a car when I was hit by a car and lost 2 days of memory. So I've actually had amnesia, I suppose, technically happen to me, because I don't know. 2 days of my life, they don't exist. I woke up on a Tuesday morning and I had no idea what had happened the previous 2 days. Still, that made a whole video about that. It's about Shadow of the Colossus. You can watch it sometime. So this, this is a survival horror game. It's got, save points. It's got, it's got dark atmosphere. You're wandering around. You're reading forums. There's a good vibe. Now, I'll admit, I only got about an hour into this game. And so I don't want to overly,
lampoon it, or I don't want to say it's too basic. I guess what I mean by lampoon is I don't want to say this is so basic of a game that I didn't complete. Right? I only played it for a couple hours. The other games I did complete, and I wanted to get much further into it, but those of you who watched last week's video know. My wife and I are foster parents. We now have 3 additional kids. We already had 2, now we have 5, and that's a lot. And I just am not having time to play very much video games right now. I get like 2 or 3 hours a night before I have to go to sleep and then do it all over again. Okay, so you're gonna have to give me a break on the video game front. Okay, so what do I like about Signalis? The atmosphere is pretty good. I think that the aesthetic is pretty nice. I kind of like this kind of alien retrofuturism kind of stuff, where like it's kind of like all these tactile buttons like you can see here on the screen. I think that's all pretty great and good. But did it surprise me? And the answer right now, at least, is no. No, this is the one game actually that isn't gonna surprise me. Spoiler for the next game, but. Signalis to me just feels like I'm playing Resident Evil again. I played a Resident Evil 1, I played a Resident Evil 2, the originals, I played their remakes a little bit, I played Silent Hill 2. I know the standard survival horror kind of formula, and this game fits it to a T. Now, could it change? Is the first 2 hours of this game representative of the whole? I don't know. Okay, I know that there's some like lesbian stuff in here and blah 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 blah, but I know for sure that this game did not surprise me so far. It feels like I'm playing just another version of a survival horror game I've already played before, and that's okay. It's just there's nothing that it's evolved from the formula that was pioneered in like 1996 by Resident Evil, or if we go back even further, like in 87 or something by Sweet Home, right? Capcom. Thank you, Capcom. So, yeah, Signalis didn't surprise me. So sorry. And now for the game that has the worst footage for us to do this whole thing on, which is Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium came out in 2019. I was the user who suggested it. If you remember, on the surprise video, I said that I was going to play Disco Elysium and your recommendations. So I played through some of Disco Elysium as well. I didn't get super far, but I got far enough where I feel like I can talk about it in this video. It's worth talking about adventure games for a second. So adventure games are hard for me. There are a couple of genres that I kind of bounced off a lot now that I'm like in my 30s. And those, the two that come to most mind are adventure games and RPGs. And for kind of the same and different reasons. Both, I find myself as someone who really likes action games. I like games that are tactile, where I press a button and something happens. I describe an action game, and whenever you see it, we talk about action games on the channel, that is, I always try to describe an action game as a game where you press a button and something happens on the screen. Generally speaking, like you press a button and the character jumps, and thus your ability to manage those buttons, your character's jumps, their shoots, whatever, that is what an action game is. You have to make real decisions in real time. And as opposed to like an adventure game here where you're mostly navigating menus. And RPGs are the same way. Most RPGs, there are action RPG games, but many other RPG games, you're just navigating menus. That's the whole game, is you're navigating menus and reading text. And Disco Elysium is one of those. I find I bounce off these games kind of often. There's a variety of reasons for that. I think when I play video games, I want to sit down and play them. If I want to like sit down and like passively like enjoy something in a different sense, I'll read a book or I'll watch a movie or a TV show or something like that, right? And so Disco Elysium, I bounced off it the first time, I think in part because of that, because it was just another adventure game. And adventure games, they often just don't surprise me because they are, it's just me reading. And if I wanted to read, I'd pick up a, Underland or some other book, and enjoy it. And that's okay. I like reading. I like watching movies, but I don't go to games for that kind of entertainment. I kind of have this expectation that movies can do it better. Now, that's not really fair, though. That's worth noting. That's not a fair assessment of all adventure games or RPGs, because there's obviously a lot of thinking going on there. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of strategy, right? I like strategy games. This is the ironic thing. I really like strategy and puzzle games, and they're not action games, but they engage my mind, I think, more than most adventure or RPG games do. Most adventure and RPG games, I kind of autopilot the whole way through. And so that's why I bounced off Disco Elysium. So quick description, Disco Elysium, you play as a cop and you are trying to solve a murder, but you have amnesia. You were partying hard the last couple days and you don't remember who you are. And so the game is kind of
both of this exploration of trying to discover a murderer and going into the political kind of psychological side of this whole murder investigation, but it's also trying to figure out who you are, and as a cop, as a person, as a human being, with all these really unique menus and kind of personalities kind of chiming in. Like your limbic system pops in and gives you advice, and then it's like your cop personality has thoughts, and then your analytical side of your personality has thoughts, and like they're always battling with each other. So there's like this sense of a real internal debate and monologue kind of happening between the different factions within your own brain. And I don't know how much of it is based on actual real brain chemistry, but it feels legitimate. It feels good when you play the game. I'd say as far as adventure games go, it's got one of the more unique kind of systems, and it's just very, very, very well done. The dialogue is well written. The voice acting is quite engaging. The plot moves forward at a strong enough pace. It does all the little things really well. Like if I were to say like what's the best adventure game I've ever played, it might be Disco Elysium, because like there's this kind of pound for pound, the technical aspects of the game feel just so well developed and strong. But did it surprise me? And this is actually surprising to me. Yes, it did surprise me. I kind of had a 50-50 relationship. I know everyone loves Disco Elysium. I know it's a really like popular pick, especially people like me who make video essays. We like Disco Elysium. We got this shoulder dance going on here. Sorry. Disco Elysium surprised me most in how emotional it made me feel. While playing the game and being this like sorry piece of shit who's got no life, who's addicted to drugs, who nobody likes, and like I don't know, there's something about just like the way the game kind of carried itself that really got me. Like I was really emotional while playing this game. I'm not done with it, mind you. I'm not even very far. There I was, I guess, exiting out, alt-tabbing out for half a second. But I was really emotional playing Disco Elysium, and it really did surprise me how engaging it was. It was so engaging from start to finish, and I think that I'm really excited. This is the game, like Signalis, I'm not super excited to go back and keep playing. This game, I want to finish. I really want to do it, because I want to know what happens. I love Kim Kitsurugi. Your partner in this game, he's so fun, he's so great, and like I do think it's like a real anxiety trip to have everybody just hate you in a game, but I think it's fun. I think a lot of adventure games, the main character is like a nobody who everybody kind of is ambivalent to or likes, and I kind of love that you kind of have all this personal history with all these characters already because you were drunk the last 2 days and you don't remember it, and now you have to atone for that. I think there's something really kind of neat about it, and I enjoy that aspect of the game. So yeah, Disco Elysium surprised me. It surprised me by how emotional it made me feel, which is not normal. Adventure games don't usually make me feel that way. RPGs don't make me feel that way usually. It takes a lot for a video game to make me feel really emotional. This has in the past. Maybe I'm changing, and that's okay. Maybe you'll change too. So there you have it. I played 5 of your and my games, and some of them surprised me. Only one didn't, and so that's a pretty good track record, you guys. I'm really thankful for all the suggestions I got. I know that I didn't end up playing all the games you suggested. I couldn't have possibly, but I still appreciate each and every suggestion because they got me to the point where I played these games and I enjoyed myself. I look forward to continuing to talk with you guys like next week. All right. A couple of nights ago, my friend and I went to see the new Alien movie. Billed as a legacy sequel or soft reboot of the franchise, Alien Romulus concerns a new group of unlucky souls as they encounter those famous and ostensibly perfect killing machines we've been enjoying ever since the first movie dropped in 1979. Alien Romulus is a pretty good movie. It's got some inventive moments, is decently well paced, the actors give a good performance, and the vibe is impeccably within the parameters of the franchise. It's also kind of boring and also kind of sucks, mostly because it's a legacy sequel and bogged down by that fact. It's filled with callbacks to earlier films, ends up defaulting to the narrative structure of the first film, and shoves a now dead actor in our faces to bribe some nostalgic feelings out of us. All of that is misplaced and awkward, and it undermines all the good things the film does. Legacy sequels are films and TV shows which pick up in the same universe as some other popular piece of media, but do usually occur decades after the original. They usually have some characters return while including new characters alongside them. Often but not always, the new characters form the main cast and the old characters recede into the background. Some recent examples include the Star Wars sequel trilogy, the Jurassic World trilogy, Top Gun Maverick, the Creed movies, those new Ghostbusters movies set in cornfields, and Blade Runner 2049. The best legacy sequel I can think of is Star Trek The Next Generation, which takes place 80 or so years after the original series and has none of the original cast, but carries the original's spirit and vibe. The Next Generation, though, is an exception to the truth. Legacy sequels suck. They suck for all kinds of reasons. They are filled with fan service and references to old media, which might make them more enjoyable to a fan of Easter eggs, but tend to subdue a film's ability to make its own style. They often repeat plots from their original films, like in Star Wars The Force Awakens, which has essentially the same story as the original Star Wars film. By repeating narratives, these movies lack originality or new character arcs while becoming predictable and boring. They often feel like shameless cash grabs dreamt up by studio executives hoping to raise profits, rather than artistic minds with something new to say, which makes them feel hollow and forgettable. When done particularly poorly, they can even undermine whatever made their forebearers interesting in the first place, which makes viewers less likely to go back and enjoy the movies they used to like. These reasons are common criticisms of legacy sequels, but I'd like to use Alien Romulus to make a similar argument I haven't precisely seen before. Legacy sequels don't speak to or for our current times, which blunts any value they might otherwise have. You know, art is a form of communication, and while we can carve all kinds of exceptions out of that statement, it's mostly true. We make art to communicate ideas and feelings to other people. Ideally, art is present-minded, made by people living right now for other people living right now about the things people living right now are going through. Legacy sequels, though, like live-action remakes, don't feel like that. They feel like art made by people of the past for other people of the past about the things people in the past went through. The past is valuable. Most of my favorite movies are from before I was born, and a good chunk were made before my mom was even born, but I watched them in the knowledge that they were made for the people of then, and anything I take from them has to be filtered through that truth, through that lens. Legacy sequels, though, don't have that benefit of a past filter we can look at them through. They are movies made now with no interest in what's going on right now. So, what's the point? Before we get to Alien Romulus, let's take a quick look at the first Alien movie to understand how a movie can be made for a present moment. The original Alien is scary, well-paced, and iconic, but it's also got some interesting ideas. It explores man's relationship with nature, supposing that while we feel like we're on top of the food chain, we don't know what else lurks out there and could be usurped by a species more vicious than we. This message likely resonated in the late 70s and early 80s, in which some of the first generations truly divorced from the fear of nature grew up. Alien also has this kind of strange pregnancy body horror and interesting portrayal of the fear and danger of childbirth, which makes sense given women were beginning to enter the workplace and
at record rates at least, and pregnancy could be seen by some as dangerous to their careers or their livelihoods, right? Just like how having an alien parasite in your chest might be. It supposes a future synthetic human relevant to the birth of computers at the time, which exists only to serve a megacorporation whose indifference to the lives of its employees probably felt meaningful given the similar rise in megacorporations in the post-war US era. These are not original ideas of mine. These are pretty commonplace ideas about the original Alien movies, but suffice to say, Alien is a movie which feels relevant to a 1970s audience. Alien Romulus does not feel like it was made for our present moment. In the first few scenes, we follow the main character, Rain's mundane life stuck on a mining planet. Her parents died from either accidents related to mining or illnesses procured from it. She saves up enough work hours to fly her and her synthetic brother away to a new planet, but meaning the corporation, raises the amount of hours needed, so then she can't leave. That setback forces her into an arrangement with some acquaintances to break into an abandoned ship and steal its materials for space travel. None of these early plot points feel like meaningful commentary on contemporary life. Yes, Corporation Bad is real, but Corporation Bad is a message we've been hearing for over 50 years. What corporation and why they're bad matter if you're going to say something new about the topic, say anything salient about it. Here, though, it's not that new. While the movie was made by a Uruguayan man, the primary audience is Americans, and most people in America aren't working in mines. Most people's parents aren't dying directly because of their occupation. While many people's ability to move around may be limited because of their ability to procure employment, no government or corporate agency is stopping, at least most citizens, from going to California or Texas or New York or wherever they want to go. None of this feels meaningfully of our moment. Meanwhile, a large portion of Alien Romulus's plot concerns Rain's synthetic brother, Andy. We are living in a moment of precarious AI change, but Andy feels like nothing like the AI of our times. He's a synthetic person who tells jokes and has a motor disability. While we maybe could argue the treatment of Andy is a telling criticism of our contemporary context where we don't make the world accessible to disabled people, the film doesn't do that. It situates Andy as an android within the plot. And, light spoilers, eventually basically just gives him a computer chip upgrade which removes all of his disabilities. So we're clearly not meant to see him as a stand-in for disabled people. We're meant to see him as a robot who will hopefully inspire some sympathy. The issue with this is that the robots of our time do not yet, maybe, I don't know if they ever will, aspire to empathy or sympathy. They're barely even robots. Machine learning tools like ChatGPT are just plagiarism machines. You can't have a relationship with them. So this entire plot rings hollow, or at least it isn't relevant to our contemporary context. Alien Romulus is like this with every single plot point and thematic idea because they're all lifted from a continuation of some idea someone else had 40 years ago. They mostly only speak to the concerns someone from 40 years ago had or might have had 40 years later. Worse, these are imagined concerns for a fictional universe from 40 years ago, so they don't address the issues of the past or the issues of the present. Again, what's the point? I know the point is to make money, but what's the point of the communication, the communicative act? What are we supposed to take away from this? What are we supposed to learn? Probably nothing. I guess we should just be excited as some character said the same lines as another character did 40 years ago or something. I'm so tired of it all. I know I'm part of the problem because I went and saw the movie in the theater, but as our contemporary media landscape is more and more filled with these legacy sequels, remakes, and comic book adaptations, I worry that while yes, movies that address our contemporary life, like, I don't know, I saw the TV Globe, Past Lives, Poor Things, Certain Women, Everything Everywhere All at Once, etc., they're going to keep coming out. But our popular cultural context, what everyone is the sea everyone is swimming in, is going to be stuck in the mud of the past, trudging through recycled versions of other people's ideas until they're so worn down that they mean nothing at all to anyone. And I actually didn't really finish the script. I guess I just decided I would
just try to talk my way through this one. So here's some final thoughts about this. I think that with legacy sequels, it's got the same problem remakes have, right? Remakes, they are just remakes. They're hoping to capture some nostalgic feeling you had for the thing of the past. The same thing can be true for legacy sequels. The new Star Wars sequel movies mostly just try to say, hey, you like Star Wars, you want to feel like you did when you watched Star Wars again? Sound good? Alien Romulus definitely fits the bill. Hey, you like Alien, why not watch a movie that'll kind of make you feel like Alien does? And I don't think that that's a meaningful communicative act to just plagiarize something else. Maybe that does make legacy sequels really valuable in the machine learning context, right, of ChatGPT and things, because they're the same way, right? They're just approximations of something someone else already did, right? That's all they could possibly do. And that's all a legacy sequel can possibly do, is give you an approximation of a feeling you once had. But that approximation grows less and less familiar. It grows less and less prescient. It grows less and less meaningful for our contemporary context. I think that it can be tricky when we're looking at films made, in that kind of golden era of new media franchises, aka the late 70s and into the 80s and 90s maybe a little bit, because during that era, people of, especially the United States, has undergone tremendous change in the past 30 or 40 years, right? If we're looking at like from the Great Depression up through like the 80s, that's about the same amount of time between the 80s and now. And I would say that those people who lived through that experienced a lot more change than people do now. But even though they may have experienced more change than we do, that doesn't make our contemporary context less valuable or less meaningful to speak to. And there's so much to speak to, right? We live in this era of social media, of cell phones, all the things Black Mirror likes to talk about. We live in a time of Trumpism, right? We live in a time, of, LGBTQ rights kind of exploding, right? There's like so much stuff you could make a movie on. There's so many interesting stories that we could tell. And the issue isn't necessarily that legacy sequels get made. The issue is that legacy sequels suck up all the air in the room. And so less and less people are spending their time watching movies or TV shows that are relevant for their lives right now. They're watching shows that are not relevant to really anyone. And I just think that that's such a bummer. I think it's just such a bummer. And I guess, normally my videos end on a hopeful note. So here's my hopeful note for you, I guess. Try to watch stuff that isn't legacy sequels. All right, there's a lot of good stuff out there. A lot of really enjoyable stuff. My favorite movie last year is Past Lives. As somebody who, I dated my now wife for about like 4 or 5 months, where we were long distance, kind of like some of the characters are in that movie. And that really resonated with me in my story of finding love. And there's other stuff in there too that I could dive into, but this isn't a video about past lives. That movie, Past Lives, feels relevant for my modern context. And I'm sure you can find movies that are relevant to yours. Go find them. Tell me about them. Tell me about what movie you watched recently that was relevant to your modern context. That's a good way to end the video. Tell me what you saw. Now, for those of you who have been following along, this is video number 13 in the Ephemeral Evelynn series, which I started in June. So in June, the first week of June, I said I'd make a video every week this summer. And I did, assuming I get this video out on time. And so I'm really proud of myself for that, especially because, my family went from 2 kids to 5 kids in that time, and I have no time to make or write videos. Sorry if the quality seemed to dip the last couple weeks. That said, maybe some of you are sad to see it go. I got good news. I have a surprise for you all. Ideally, next week, Monday, when this video expires, I'm going to release a new video. It'll be a surprise. I'm not going to tell you anything about it. It won't be deleted. It won't after 7 days. You'll have access to it in perpetuity, and I hope you like it. All right. I'll see you then.
All right, welcome back to the culmination of this season of Ephemeral Evelynn. I've got some notes here to read from, but otherwise I'm just going to talk to you kind of straight about what it was like to make a video every week this summer and then delete them a week later, why I did it, how I feel about it now, and what things maybe look like in the future for Evelynn. I am Aaron, that's me.
So first of all, one of the first thoughts that kind of comes to my mind is that I probably didn't need to delete the video every week to kind of achieve the same artistic aim that I was going for, right? So my goal was to respark some creative energy within myself that I had felt I had lost in one way or another. And I could have probably just kept the videos up and just made a video every week this summer. But, and maybe you will find this not a very satisfying answer, I do think deleting them every week gave me a sense of freedom for the topics I chose to cover. The truth is, when you make videos on YouTube, you tend to be very selective about what you make videos on. And there's a variety of reasons for that and motivations. For some people, they want every video to be a success so that their channel kind of snowballs in views. Because if you have unsuccessful videos on boring or not particularly popular topics, that can end up actually hurting you in the long run. So some people, they want to only select those topics which are most algorithm friendly. I think other people, they select topics based on what they are most passionate about, right? And it's hard to do that if you're purposefully making a video every week, no matter what, right? What happens if one week you don't have a topic that is that great, right? And so there's that kind of like that passion. I have to really care about this thing, and I kind of got to be thinking about the algorithm a little bit too. Finally, though, and I think the motivation that really drove me, and I talk about it in the Creative Spark video at the beginning of the season, is that I'm definitely a person motivated by thinking about my au revoir, right? My filmography, my YouTube library. What are the videos I've released to this world? And for me, I delete videos all the time or unlist them from YouTube because I don't like that they're in my personal library. I view my library of videos as some kind of reflection of me, of my artistic output, and I curate it as such. And to me, that was a highly motivating factor in wanting to delete the videos after a week. You may think that's silly or stupid, but that was really the motivating factor for me to delete the videos, was that I didn't like that they were in my library. That problem is not solved. I still wouldn't want really most of these videos sitting on my YouTube page forever. And maybe that's just a me problem. Maybe that means I need to start a different YouTube channel. I don't know. While I think that it wasn't totally necessary to delete the videos, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I'm making this compilation for you. I kind of like that there is a compilation. That's something I like in my library. And so I'm happy that I did it. That said, the algorithm hated that I did this. If you look at I'm not going to show them to you, the numbers, but then pretty much every week was a steady decline in viewers. Every week was a steady decline in impressions, meaning how many people YouTube was showing my videos to. And I think that makes sense for two obvious reasons. One, the subjects over the course of the summer became a little bit more and more vague. And two, I think that because my videos would only get views for 1 week and then stopped getting views, YouTube had a hard time guessing what my, channel's new audience was. Is it because I think that there's a lot of people who come to my channel only for particular kinds of videos, and they'll check out the unique little one-off videos. But if I release tons of them back to back, I think a lot of people check out, and that's okay. I think a lot of people checked out during this season. So in terms of the algorithm, my channel's taken a little bit of a hit from doing this, but I don't really care. I care a little bit, but I'm just glad to make videos, and I think that the people who enjoyed them really enjoyed them, and I think that's what's meaningful and important to me, is that there is an audience who did enjoy my videos this month. Also, thinking about quality. This has kind of been something that's come up a lot in the comments of my videos, because I will, when people, especially the last couple weeks, when people came onto the channel and kind of complained that the videos had expiration dates, like, why are you doing this? A lot of people, oh, by the way, just a tangent, a lot of people were like, oh, this is stupid marketing stunt, you're making false scarcity, you evil YouTuber. And it's like, in regards to the expiring videos. And I'm like, it's so dumb. Like, it did not help my channel at all to delete the videos. And I think that the people, complaining about them deleting because it's manipulative or whatever, no, I'm not manipulating you. This is just an artistic expression experience. It was a trial run. It was an attempt to do something new and fresh and unique. Okay, that's what it was. And sure, it had the side effect of perhaps maybe making you feel a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, but that wasn't my intention. And who cares if you missed one? So anyway, so when those comments would come up, I would say, it doesn't matter if you missed them. They're mediocre videos, right? And that's kind of how I feel. I feel like very few of these videos from this summer are videos where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a real stellar I Am Evelynn video, right? Most of them, I kind of have this kind of love-hate relationship with them. I appreciate them for what they are, videos made in 1 week. But I also can appreciate the fact that they are not the highest quality, neither in terms of writing or filming and the way I, kind of had to do the presentation. I have a pretty high bar for how I feel my videos should look and feel, and the level of research I put into them, the level of editing I do on the scripts, and none of those bars were cleared very often this summer. But that said, a lot of you took offense to me saying that they were mediocre videos. And I would just say, that's fair. That's fair. You don't click on my videos expecting mediocrity. You expect something good, something great. And I hope that I delivered in some senses on whatever you think is good about my channel. I hope you got that in the videos. But for me, the quality definitely was a little bit lower. And my question kind of regarding that is, am I okay with the quality lowering? And that's a tricky question to answer, right? On one hand, you guys got content, right? Content, what a stupid word. You guys got videos, you got films to watch over the course of the summer. And that's really, it's kind of like, a pizza is better than no pizza, right? A video is better than no video. And so what would have happened if over the course of this 3 months I released one video or no videos over the course of the summer, right? You guys would have gotten nothing to chew on, nothing to watch, nothing to look at. I think that, and that's one of the things with quality that I got to think about is like, would I have made a video this summer? I think I would have made a video this summer. It wouldn't have been like any of these though. Making the short videos, I really like making long videos. I kind of have this kind of sense of my channel identity of making long videos. If you look at like 2021 and 2022 and 2023, the big marquee important videos I made were the long ones, right? Long hour-and-a-half reviews of Ocarina of Time, 3-hour reviews of Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, a 4-hour review, 3.5-hour review of Omori, right? Those are kind of the things. See, I guess there's always like a difference between how viewers view my channel and how I view my channel, right? And so for me, I view my channel as this place for these very long-form, in-depth, personal conversations about games and potentially films and TV shows and things like that, right? That's kind of what I view my channel as. And so I make these, long, elaborate reviews because that's how I conceive of what my channel is. But if we look at what's popular on my channel, it's videos about Minecraft, videos about being trans, right? Those are not Minecraft, sorry, Minesweeper. Those are the videos that seem to capture people's attention. Those are the videos that bring people in. I think a lot of my viewers would probably prefer it if I made videos on trans experiences a lot more often, or maybe made videos on, shorter videos on like Minesweeper, or maybe, I don't know. I just don't know what you guys expect of my channel, but I know that because I make so many different kinds of videos, I think I've got a segmented different kinds of audiences, and it's hard to please all of you, but most importantly, it's hard to please myself. And making these short videos, I'm like, it's not bad to make short videos. I think that the short videos were fun to make, and I enjoyed making them, and that's good. Even if they're not exactly what, I aspire to be as a channel, how I view myself, or how I view my creations, right? That said, I do feel like I'm mostly making short videos out of necessity. My life is so hectic right now. I spent a lot of time in the early summer and in the spring, like applying for jobs. We went from having 2 kids to having 5 kids to now being down to 4 kids. And that was really wild. And it's like, I don't have a lot of mental space to make a 3-hour review that takes, hundreds of hours to research, to write, to record and edit, right? I just don't have the time for that. And so there's the sense of like short videos I make them out of necessity because I want to make videos and I don't have the space in my life right now to make a 4-hour review of Whisper of the Heart, or whatever. I'd love to be that person who did make those videos. And I think that gets into a little bit of the difference between a job and a hobby or a jobby. I don't know what we'd call this. I do get paid for this. I do make some money. And I really appreciate everyone who gives me money on Patreon and everyone who, watches my videos, watches the ads I get in front of them so that I get some ad revenue on YouTube. It's not much. It's not enough to live off of. I have a full-time job as a college instructor as well on top of that. It does feel like that sometimes. Sometimes feels like even though YouTube doesn't pay me, this is my main job, and then I teach on the side. But this is still, I hesitate to say hobby because I do get paid for it. I'm a professional YouTube video maker. But, it's this jobby that I do, right? And if this was my job and I spent 40 hours a week, 50, 60 hours a week working on this job, I would make long form, beautiful reviews. I put them out on DVD, I'd be so into it. I hire people to help me make the best videos I can make, to edit my videos. I would do so much. And this is not, dug deep and 3 hours into a compilation video. This is not my plea for you to join my Patreon and to make that a reality that I could just do this as a full-time job. That reality will or won't come. Probably won't. I've accepted that. It's a hard, competitive space to make YouTube videos full-time. And there's some people who are really, really successful at it, and they get they've got lots of fans to support them, and I'm so happy for each and every one of those people. And I'm not one of them quite yet. Maybe not ever. I would love to be, but I got a family. I've got, a job, and I can't devote the amount of time and resources it might take to get there, to get to, like, I don't know, 1 million subscribers or whatever, right? And that's okay. I'm not bummed out about it, but there's a reality there that I can only make the videos that someone working this as a jobby can make, right? That's the only kind of video I can make. And making these short videos did help me feel artistic and make something and, inspire me to make more. Because I had actually done something. I actually made something rather than just imagining that I might make something but not having the time or will or energy to do so. So, yeah, there's a conflict between my aspirational identity and my realistic identity that I'm still trying to navigate. But I think that there is a really important final question that I want to answer here for you all, which did doing this, I made a video about losing the creative spark. That was the first video in the series. Did this process, did making a video every week for the whole summer, come rain, sleet, snow, or shine, did that reignite my spark? I think the answer is yes. I think I feel more excited to make videos, even though my life is so wild and crazy, and even way crazier than it was at the beginning of this project. At the beginning of this project, I had 2 kids. Right now I've got twice as many, and they have way more needs than the 2 did. But even so, I feel more excited to make videos than I did then. And I think it's because I'm not so stuck in my head now. I was so stuck in my head about the videos I was making, and I had gone through this feeling where I had finished Elaborate Reviews Season 2, which was about the best games I had ever played at 5, 10, 15, and 20, and I felt a little lost. I thought about making an elaborate review of E.T., the Extraterrestrial, the video of a game for the Atari 2600. I thought about making a season of elaborate reviews on media about the creative process, like Whisper of the Heart, one of my favorite films, Parappa the Rapper, a great rhythm game from the 90s, etc. There's a couple other ones in there, but I thought that might be my next big project. Patrons would know that because I gave them an update where I talked about my feelings on that a little bit. But the material wasn't coming. The creative spark wasn't driving me to make that stuff, and now I feel like that spark is back, and I have this yearning to make more stuff, to talk to you further, to tell you about whatever I tell you about. So I'm going to keep making videos, and I'm really excited to keep making videos for you guys, and I feel like the creative spark is back. It's different than it was, but it's back, and I like that. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the future of the channel. So will I keep making ephemeral Evelynn videos, meaning videos that expire after a week or expire after a certain amount of time? The answer is I don't know, but I do know that we're going to take a break from the expiring videos for now. I think it was a fun project for this summer, but the channel is not just going to be expiring videos from now until the end of time. This was a one-off project, and I did it. And that's season 1. This video, Expired Food, is season 1 of me doing ephemeral Evelynn. A lot of shows, though, especially on Netflix, get canceled after one season, and this one might be that. But I know that I'm going to keep making videos. There'll be videos out soon, hopefully, as though I'm probably going to take a little bit of break while I start the new semester. But I do know that I'm going to make regular videos. I'll make some regular videos, maybe not elaborate reviews, maybe not 3 hours, but I'll make some regular videos about topics that I find interesting, topics that hopefully you'll find interesting, and we'll go from there. And I think that, as well, I think that Ephemeral Evelynn might come back. Maybe next summer I'll have the gusto to be like, we're gonna do it again, all summer long, a video every week. Maybe we'll do something wild, like maybe there'll be a week where I plan ahead and I make a video every day for a week. Whoa, who knows exactly what will happen. But I know I Am Error will continue making videos. That's me. And Ephemeral Evelynn may or may not return someday in the future. We'll have to find out. You and me, we'll find out together, okay? Now, I've sandwiched this little video between this and the next video, which is about my inability to rest. That video never came out. I didn't really like it very much when I recorded it, and I watched it back. I felt like it didn't do what I had hoped it would do. But maybe it will do for you what I had hoped that it would do, or maybe it'll do something even better. So, enjoy that last video. I'm Error. See you later. Hey, I have no idea where I'm going to go. I might drift in and out of shot here, but I thought I'd talk to you today from here. Oh my God, it's drifting me so far over this way. Can you even still see me over there on the camera? Gosh darn it. I don't know. I'm going to have to go check. Who knows where this raft will go, but I'm here with you today. This video is about resting. I can actually see a really beautiful world from right here. Maybe I should bring the camera on the boat. Why don't I do that? Crank that down. There we go. That's probably a little bit better of a shot, but we're gonna have to get this a lot lower. And then we'll have to get it a little bit higher so you guys can see the skyline. And then if I go sit on that green square, I think I'll be good. I don't know if you can hear me, but I can't hear me. Hi, this video is about resting. I'm a little wet now from all that moving. I think I'm just going to keep all that in. The funny thing is, I'm bad at resting, I'm here. I'm right now where I'm at my grandparents' cabin. They bought it in like the 60s. Actually, they bought the land in the 60s and they built this small cabin up here.
And every summer for the past maybe 4 or 5 years, my wife and I and my kids, we all come up here and we spend a week. It's our vacation spot, right? It's up in the Northwoods, northern Wisconsin, and this is where I grew up, is up in the Northwoods. It's a beautiful place, lots of trees, lots and lots of trees. If you've never been, I'd recommend it. It's a pretty relaxing place, I suppose many people would say. But it's not that relaxing for me. Maybe it's because I grew up here. I feel too much nostalgia for it to be totally relaxing. But even this cabin doesn't have such relaxing history for me. When I was in high school, my family lost our home, part of the recession, the Great Recession, that is. And we were, I suppose you could say, I think by technical terms, we were homeless. And while we were homeless, we moved up to the cabin. And we lived here for like 6 to 8 months. That wasn't very relaxing for me. No internet, no cable, I suppose. Not very much entertaining. It was the middle of winter, so I couldn't really enjoy the lake. And that sucked. It wasn't relaxing. Just was this cold place with a fireplace that I had to live for a period of time. When I was in college, I would come up here and spend a week all by myself. Now you think, wow, for some people, I think that sounds really relaxing, right? You come up here, you come to a secluded cabin in the middle of the wilderness, and you just relax, you just hang out. But not me. I would bring up my guitar, my amp, my drum set, and I would record an album. I recorded 2.5 albums up in the cabin up there. I didn't come up here to relax. I came up here to work. And the truth is that I have a really hard time relaxing. I even turn things that should be relaxing into work. My master's degree is first of all, my bachelor's degree is in English, right? Reading. I used to read for fun. I turned that into a career. My master's degree is in film. So I turned watching movies, which used to be fun, maybe used to be relaxing, into now it's a job. It's a job, right? I write papers and books about movies. I got my PhD in video games, so that's what my dissertation was on. Took another thing that was relaxing and fun, and I turned it into work. And of course, I've got this YouTube channel too, where I turn writing into work. Writing is usually work anyways, but I turn video games into work, right? I record the video games I play so that I might include them in a video for you. I think about the Elden Ring video, one of my most popular long-form vids. I played through the game twice without taking footage. So then I had to play through the whole game, play through all of Elden Ring once, just to have footage for you. Kind of silly, isn't it? That wasn't relaxing for me. I remember it was really arduous. I was really annoyed that I hadn't recorded my first or second playthrough, especially because I was writing a script while I was doing those playthroughs. I don't consider myself a workaholic per se. I'm not somebody who kind of, clocks in at work and never clocks out. Instead, I think that I'm just somebody who doesn't have that component in their brain to just relax, to just let it all go. My brain is always just working too quickly, too fast. And so I end up here, sitting on this beautiful lake in the middle of a beautiful day. Really, it's gorgeous out. And I'm here recording a video for you. Recording an ephemeral Evelynn I Am Error YouTube video here on this beautiful lake. And it looks gorgeous. It's a really, really pretty sight. But why am I doing this? I knew that this would happen. When I started this series, for those of you who don't know, I'm making a video every week this summer. And releasing a video every week this summer would be the better way to put it. I'm releasing a video every week this summer, and I'm putting them out. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought for a second. I don't have a script, you might have noticed. Normally, I have a script that I read to you. I have a teleprompter, but not this time. No teleprompter, just me talking to you. I wrote some notes down. They're on my phone, which might be in the shot. I don't know. But I'm not reading from those notes. I'm just kind of talking through what I remember from them.
But when I started this Ephemeral Evelynn series, that's what I've come to call it for myself, which is I release a video every week on Monday, and then I delete it the next Monday and replace it with a new video. I knew that I would come up here and I would vacation for a week, and I knew that I would make a video. And I knew the first week what that video would be about. It'd be about how I can't rest, how I struggle to just let my mind go. You know, like even coming up here, you'd think it'd be relaxing. Instead, one of the things I find is whenever I go on vacation, when I've got more time to think, when I'm not working so hard, my depression rears up. Instead of, you thinking like, oh, I finally had time to just let some stuff go, to relax. Instead, my brain goes, finally, a time to think thoughts about how worthless I am. That's what happens. The cabin is this all vacations really, but the cabin especially is this place where it's filled with these negative emotions I can just find. I find so easily when I'm idle. And so I don't relax. Sure, I do activities that could be considered relaxing. Maybe I browse Reddit. Ugh. Used to do that a lot more than I do now. Maybe I swipe up on Instagram on a million videos, watch YouTube videos, but in all those instances, I don't feel like I'm relaxing. I feel like I'm finding just enough something to give my attention to kind of turn off my brain. I don't view relaxing. I don't think it's turning off your brain, at least not entirely. If you turn off your brain entirely, you're not relaxing, because relaxing is finding a way to kind of reset yourself. And I really think I have trouble doing that. And I'm ashamed of it. I am ashamed that I'm a person who can't relax. I don't think I'm proud of being somebody who works so hard 24/7. I wake up and I'm thinking about work. I go to sleep and I'm thinking about work. And having kids, that's just a weird thing for me. Like it's like I went hiking with my child earlier this week. It was really fun. We went hiking around a lake. Not this lake, but there's a lake nearby that has a trail. And they're 2 years old, but they walked the entire 2-mile trail around this lake. I was so proud of them. And you think that could be relaxing. And I agree. I think it was a little relaxing. I think I enjoyed myself to a degree. But I also know when I'm with my kids, as relaxing as it can be, I'm in a work mindset. I'm doing this, walking around doing this hike or whatever, because I know it's good for my children, right? It's something that they'll enjoy. I'm thinking about that while I'm doing it, right? How can I make this enjoyable for them, right? Still thinking about work, still having a work mindset. I don't know. Maybe nothing's wrong with me. Maybe this is the way everybody is. Maybe this is the way you are. Maybe it's not. I don't know. What I thought I would do for this video is I thought I'd try to just relax out here. I thought I'd just lie down, keep the camera rolling, and just try to not think for a little while. Just try to take some breaths. Today hasn't been a super relaxing day. We took family pictures up by the cabin. I went and got donuts and coffee, but I've been really depressed since I woke up. Probably because I was really depressed when I went to bed last night. And I'm going to try not to have depressed thoughts right now. For you, for me, for us. Amir, maybe we'll go 10 minutes. Maybe we'll go till the camera dies. Maybe we'll go 3 minutes. I don't know. But let's try to just lie down and rest. Love you. I love you.
I keep having this urge to check how much time has elapsed. I'm going to try to resist it for a little longer. I am certainly aware of the fact that I am being filmed. I worry about you seeing, some piece of my bra or my underwear or something. So I'm just wearing a skirt and a crop top. But I am relaxing a little. Let's keep going. I glanced how much time has elapsed. At 11 minutes was around when this thing has a timer. It tells me how long I've been recording here. At 11 minutes, it said that was when we were about done with this talking portion, and I saw it. It says 19 minutes. I know it's been 8 minutes. You see how hard it is for me to relax. I mean, relaxing a camera, I guess, seems kind of hard, doesn't it? I don't know. I'm sorry, everybody. Maybe I should just talk some more. I don't know. Would that be relaxing? Probably not. I keep having the urge to show you what I see because it's so pretty. But isn't that just a working way of looking at a beautiful image? Thinking, how can I capture this for you all? The sky is so pretty, though. Would it be a sin to show you? I keep thinking of things to tell you, even though I'm supposed to be kind of like, I don't know, relaxing or whatever. There. I keep thinking of what I'm going to tell you next. When isn't the whole point that I'm not supposed to be thinking about that? I don't know. I guess it's hard to work and relax at the same exact time. Look at me though. You know what I'm thinking about? I'm thinking, see, like when you see me looking there, that's me looking at the screen that shows what I look like. I should be looking here and talking directly to you. I don't know. 10 minutes has elapsed, approximately. 12 minutes, maybe. What do you think of me? That I can't just enjoy this day. I'd be having these same thoughts, by the way, if you weren't here. I wouldn't be thinking about you, maybe, but I would be still thinking something stupid, something dumb. It's more relaxing now because I'm thinking of talking to you. I'm not thinking, wow, I'm just so worthless. I'm not thinking that nobody loves me. I'm just thinking about what I'm going to say to you. So it makes it a little easier. Isn't that ironic? Isn't that sad? I think that it is sad. That's what I think. It's a real windy day, which is going to be unfortunate when I get to the recording, because either I'm going to have to rely just on this, and this only really records in one direction, and it's pretty quiet when I'm not holding it, or I could use some of the recording from the camera itself, but the wind's going to go, it's going to be all annoying. I've thought about that multiple times while I was lying down and staring off into the sun. I didn't think this would happen. I thought I'd just lie down for 20 minutes. I guess I overestimated my ability to relax in this video that's about, relaxing. We'll try to go to 30. It's 4 more minutes. Set a timer on your relaxation. 4 minutes. Can you do it? I don't know. Probably not. I can't. Maybe you can. Gotta move my body, though, so that I'm in the shot. You know, this has probably been the most relaxing thing I've done all vacation, and we're at the end of it. We leave tomorrow. It's the only thing that I've done this week that will earn me any money, any revenue. I guess writing my notes out for the script counts too. Thanks for joining me. You made it all the way to the end of this video. I'll see you next week. And in the spirit of the video, which I think I'm going to do all one take, don't think I'm going to cut this up because it'll be more relaxing, the editing process that way. I will just keep the camera rolling for a moment while I go shut it off.